Chapter 91, Spirit of Vengeance, Thunderbolt's Provocation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Richard did not see the Ghost Rider in person, he just saw a few videos about the Ghost Rider on the internet. Although these videos were not long, and some of them were blurry, they were enough for him to confirm that the guy in the video was the Ghost Rider. The only thing he was not sure about now was which generation of the Ghost Rider appeared in New York. Although the Ghost Rider in the video was riding a ghost motorcycle wrapped in hellfire, but this was not enough for him to confirm the other party's identity, because except for the fourth-generation Ghost Rider who drove the ghost version of the retro muscle car and the prehistoric Ghost Rider who rode the Ghost Mammoth, the first, second, and third-generation Ghost Riders all rode ghost motorcycles. If these videos were clearer, Richard could further determine which generation of Ghost Rider this was, but unfortunately, these videos uploaded to the internet, like the UFO videos, are very blurry, and only the general outline can be seen, and there is no way to see the details clearly. Although it is impossible to determine which generation of Ghost Rider appeared in New York, and it is unknown what the purpose of this Ghost Rider's coming to New York is, Richard is not worried that the other party will come to trouble him. If it was a few months ago, he might be a little worried. After all, Ghost Rider was given an immortal body by the Spirit of Vengeance, and it is almost impossible to kill him. Now, even if he is targeted by the Ghost Rider, he will not have any worries. Not only that, he even looks forward to fighting with the Ghost Rider. In addition to wanting to see if he can kill the Ghost Rider, there is another very important reason why he wants to fight with the Ghost Rider. He wants to plunder the power of the Spirit of Vengeance. Speaking of this, we have to talk about the Plunder upgraded to the Omega level. Plunder, Omega level superpower, the extraordinary ability to plunder the lives killed by one's own hands. The system's explanation is as brief as ever. On the surface, the Plunder upgraded to the Omega level is no different from before, but in fact, the changes in Plunder are not ordinary. Before the upgrade, the plundering could only plunder the X-gene superpowers of the mutants killed by his own hands. Now, as long as he kills a life, whether it is a mutant, an inhuman, or any other life, he can plunder the other supernatural powers. This means that if he kills the Spirit of Vengeance possessed by Ghost Rider, he can plunder the supernatural powers of the Spirit of Vengeance. Before crossing, Richard had read some comics of Ghost Rider and knew that the Spirit of Vengeance was created by God in heaven and has the characteristics of immortality. Only the God who created the Spirit of Vengeance can destroy the Spirit of Vengeance, but he did not completely agree with this statement. In other words, he did not think that he would never be able to kill the Spirit of Vengeance. If this is the DC universe, then he really has no way to kill the Spirit of Vengeance created by God. But this is not the DC universe, but the Marvel universe. The God in the Marvel universe is far less powerful than the God in the DC universe, although the comics do not explain in detail what level of existence God is. From the existing information, the God of the Marvel universe is at most a single universe level, and it is likely to be just a father level like Odin. In addition to the fact that the God of the Marvel universe is not as powerful as the God of the DC universe, Richard feels that he can kill the Spirit of Vengeance for another reason, that is, he knows that the current Spirit of Vengeance is the second batch of Spirit of Vengeance, which was created by God 6,000 years ago and is called the Living Spirit Weapon. As for the first generation, that is, the original Spirit of Vengeance, they all died in the battle with the elemental demon Lord Zatanos. To be more precise, the original Spirit of Vengeance sealed the elemental demon Lord Zatanos at the cost of sacrificing himself. Let's talk about the second batch of Spirit of Vengeance, which is called the Living Spirit Weapon. The second batch of Spirit of Vengeance has the ability to devour its own kind and improve itself, so the surviving Spirit of Vengeance has devoured a large number of its own kind to improve itself. This means that the statement that only God can destroy the Spirit of Vengeance is not accurate. Apart from anything else, the Spirit of Vengeance has the ability to kill and devour its own kind. Although Richard still doesn't know what method to use to kill the Spirit of Vengeance, one thing is certain, that is, the energy possessed by the Spirit of Vengeance is not infinite. As long as all the energy of the Spirit of Vengeance is exhausted, if nothing unexpected happens, the Spirit of Vengeance can be killed. Silver Manor, the training ground behind the main building. Richard is doing daily training, trying to improve the proficiency of 8 Swords Flash and Dimension Slash. Although 8 Swords Flash and Dimension Slash have just been upgraded to level 4 not long ago, it is impossible to upgrade to level 5 in a short time. But there is an old saying that without accumulating small steps, there is no way to 1,000 miles, and without accumulating small streams, there is no way to form a river or sea. Even if it is impossible to upgrade to level 5 in a short time, as long as you persist in training and continuously improve your skill proficiency, you will upgrade one day. Richard has enough patience for this. Time passes little by little. Unknowingly, night is about to fall. After training tirelessly for an entire afternoon in the training ground, Richard put the authentic sword back into the system space, undoing the transformation of his clothes, and turning the same clothes as Sephiroth's back into normal casual wear. After doing all this, he performed teleportation and returned to the bedroom in the main building. After taking off his clothes with the help of the White Queen, he took the White Queen to the bathroom, taking a bath while enjoying the White Queen's massage service. After staying in the bathroom for almost an hour, he carried the limp White Queen back to the bedroom. Putting the White Queen on the bed, he said to her, "I'm going out to attend a charity dinner later. You don't have to wait for me to come back. Go to bed first." "Are you going alone, or taking Clarice with you?" The White Queen asked quickly. "I'm going alone," Richard replied. After hearing his answer, the White Queen said nothing more and nodded. Under the gaze of the White Queen, Richard took out a set of custom-made suits handmade by a master from the closet and put them on. With the surge in his wealth, he is now living more and more like a decadent capitalist. If there is any difference, it is that he does not focus on making money like other decadent capitalists, but focuses on improving his strength. Money is just a number to him. As long as he still has strong strength, money is not a problem at all. Soon, he got dressed and came to the garage alone. After taking a look at the more than 20 luxury cars parked in the garage, he came to an antique car produced in 1957, Aston Martin DB Mark III. From the perspective of performance, antique cars in good condition are not as good as modern models, but for Richard, who is already a billionaire, performance and cost performance are not a consideration. He would spend a high price to buy this Aston Martin DB Mark III in very good condition for a simple reason, because he saw Bruce driving this car in his movie Batman v Superman. Not only that, Bruce happened to drive this car to the dinner hosted by Luther. Interestingly, the charity dinner he attended tonight was also hosted by a person who is a good guy on the surface but a super villain in fact, Kingpin. The person who hosted tonight's charity dinner was none other than the American underworld emperor Kingpin. Of course, the organizer written on the invitation was not Kingpin, but Wilson Grant Fisk. Although Jean Bing's true identity is no secret, he is not only not imprisoned, but also lives a comfortable life. As for the reason, it is very simple, because there is a lack of evidence to prove Jean Bing's guilt. In addition, in a capitalist country like the United States, Jean Bing, who is not short of money, has many ways to make himself a nominal good man. For example, tonight's charity dinner. Richard originally did not plan to attend this charity dinner, but after knowing that Ghost Rider appeared in New York, he changed his mind. He wanted to see whether Ghost Rider was more interested in Jean Bing or him when he and Jean Bing, the underworld king of the United States, appeared in the same occasion. If you stand from the perspective of the official United States, no matter where you look at it, his threat level is much higher than Jean Bing. Jean Bing's existence will at most make the security environment a little worse, and his existence will make all the senior officials in the United States feel uneasy. But Ghost Rider is not an official United States. Ghost Rider has his own judgment standards for sin. After opening the car door and getting in, Richard drove the Aston Martin antique car, which was several times older than him, out of the manor and headed towards downtown New York, a luxury hotel in Manhattan. The guests dressed in gorgeous clothes arrived at the hotel one after another. The reporters gathered at the door of the hotel kept pressing the shutter, and the flashes came and went, taking pictures of every guest attending the dinner. Under the gaze of everyone, a silver-white Mercedes-Benz limited edition sports car came to the door of the hotel and stopped. As the door of the gullwing opened, the suit-wearing Thunderbolt and his supermodel girlfriend Fina Lair, who had just been hooked up for a few days, got out of the car. As soon as the Thunderbolt got out of the car, the reporters' cameras were pointed at him and kept pressing the shutter. Although the Thunderbolt is a member of the Fantastic Four, and the organizer of the dinner, Kingpin, is the underworld emperor of the United States, the reporters were not surprised that the Thunderbolt brought his girlfriend to the dinner. Whether it is a charity dinner or any other dinner, the Thunderbolt is a frequent guest. For him, any dinner party is a good place to make a splash. Just as the Human Torch was hugging his supermodel girlfriend's slender waist and enjoying the feeling of being surrounded by flashes with satisfaction, a black antique car arrived at the hotel entrance. As the car door opened, the flashes gathered on the Human Torch immediately shifted to the new guest, Richard. After seeing that the person getting off the car was Richard, the reporters' actions of pressing the shutter became more crazy. Whether it is reporters, media, or audiences, they all like new things and dislike old things. Compared with the Human Torch who attended the dinner with his supermodel girlfriend, the reporters are obviously more interested in Richard. In other words, the popularity and traffic he can bring are much higher than that of the Human Torch. After being called the King of Mutants, this is his second appearance in public. Richard did not care about the reporters taking pictures, nor did he pay attention to the unhappy expression on the Human Torch's face, and walked straight to the hotel gate. Just as he was about to pass by him, the Human Torch, holding Mtlnovel, whom he had just picked up, stopped him in front of him. "Why did you come here alone? Can't you find a female companion?" That the Human Torch said to Richard. Richard had not intended to pay attention to the Human Torch. After all, the main purpose of his coming here tonight was to see if the Ghost Rider would come, and whether the Ghost Rider would be more interested in him or Kingpin. After hearing the provocation of the Human Torch, he said to the Human Torch, "Is this your new girlfriend?" That just as the Human Torch was about to answer, Mtlnovel, who was hugged by his slender waist, immediately broke free from his right hand and quickly said, "No, we are not a couple, I just came to accompany him to the dinner." "What?" The Human Torch was stunned for a moment, and looked at Mtlnovel, who had agreed to date him a few days ago, in confusion. Although he didn't know why Mtlnovel suddenly denied that she was his girlfriend, he soon saw that something was wrong, because the blonde, blue-eyed, and well-groomed Mtlnovel was now looking at Richard with tenderness and affection. As a playboy, if he still couldn't see something wrong, he would be too slow. "Do you know each other?" Thunderbolt asked quickly. "Not only do we know each other, we also had in-depth exchanges in the presidential suite of the hotel. By the way, did Fina tell you that she has a sister who is as good-looking as her and is a fashion designer?" Richard looked at Thunderbolt calmly and said slowly, although he said it very tactfully. Thunderbolt immediately heard the subtext in his words. Just when Thunderbolt was about to say something, Richard continued, "You just reminded me that it would be a bit lonely to attend the dinner without a female companion." After speaking, he turned his head and looked at Mtlnovel. He didn't need to say anything more. After seeing his gaze, Mtlnovel immediately came to him, took his right hand intimately, and pressed her sexy body against him. Seeing the supermodel girlfriend that he had spent a month or two and spent a lot of effort to pick up, now it should be said that the supermodel ex-girlfriend abandoned him in an instant. After throwing herself into Richard's arms with enthusiasm, Thunderbolt's expression was as ugly as it could be. Because of the distance, the reporters around did not hear their conversation. However, after seeing Thunderbolt's new girlfriend Mtlnovel, who had just been introduced to everyone, took Richard's right hand, the professional instincts of these reporters were immediately aroused. Although they didn't know what happened specifically, it was obvious that Thunderbolt was abandoned by Mtlnovel without hesitation. In just a moment, the headlines of tomorrow's reports flashed in the minds of these reporters. At the charity dinner, the Human Torch was abandoned by his supermodel girlfriend. The Human Torch lost his true love, and his supermodel girlfriend turned to the arms of the King of Mutants. P.S. Chapter 2 will be posted during the day. Chapter 93, Forsaking One's Ancestors and Forgetting One's Clan, the Ten Ring Monks. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Although he was not hit by Ghost Rider's demonic chains, the Human Torch immediately realized that Ghost Rider was not simple. Not only that, he even began to doubt whether Ghost Rider was a mutant. Although the mutant's X-gene superpowers were not very scientific, the Human Torch's intuition told him that the flames wrapped around the chains were not ordinary flames. Ordinary flames did not have the ability to make the chain, which was only 5 or 6 meters long, surge to 20 or 30 meters. In addition, on the hellfire of the chain, he felt a breath that was completely different from ordinary flames, and a high temperature far exceeding ordinary flames. Who is this guy? The Human Torch floated in the air, frowning at the Ghost Rider. Although he did not attack the Ghost Rider now, the Ghost Rider had decided to judge him. Under the gaze of the Human Torch, the Ghost Rider opened his mouth and roared like a beast. Then, he continued to wave the ghost chain in his hand. At this time, Ghost Rider was just like a western cowboy, waving the ghost chain in his hand very skillfully. Just when Thunderbolt thought that Ghost Rider was going to continue to attack him, Ghost Rider suddenly turned around and threw the ghost chain at the fleeing gang members. The ghost chain wrapped with hellfire passed through the air like a red lightning, and in the blink of an eye it came behind these gang members. I saw Ghost Rider casually swing his right hand, and the ghost chain attacked the fleeing gang members as if it had life, and tied these guys up in an instant. The next second, Ghost Rider gently pulled back his right hand, and these gang members bound by the ghost chain flew in front of him. The next second after arriving in front of Ghost Rider, these gang members were burned to ashes by the hellfire. Ghost Rider ignored these guys and picked up the pistol that fell from the gang members. Glock 17. Hellfire Demonization. As soon as he picked up the pistol, Ghost Rider began to demonize Glock 17, in just a moment, except for the barrel and spring, which are made of metal. The Glock 17, which is made of engineering plastics, changed its appearance and became a ghost pistol that seemed to be made of bones. Like the ghost chain, the ghost pistol transformed from Glock 17 is also wrapped with hellfire. After seeing Ghost Rider pick up the pistol dropped by the gangster, Thunderbolt realized that something was wrong. His premonition was accurate. After using hellfire to demonize Glock 17 into a ghost pistol, Ghost Rider immediately pointed the muzzle at Thunderbolt in the air. Bang 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 bang. Without any hesitation, Ghost Rider frantically pulled the trigger, and the demonized bullet flew towards Thunderbolt at a high speed. Compared with using firearms to deal with enemies, Ghost Rider prefers to use cold weapons to deal with enemies in close combat. However, this does not mean that he will not use firearms. Times have changed. Even Ghost Rider will keep up with the times. Ghost Rider's mount is the best proof. Ghost Rider used to ride mammoths or horses, but modern Ghost Riders either ride motorcycles or drive cars. Although Ghost Rider can use the magicized ghost firearms, Ghost Rider's marksmanship is not very good. Soon, the original bullets in the ghost pistol were emptied. After seeing Ghost Rider raise his pistol, Thunderbolt quickly maneuvered in the air. Although he has now transformed into a fireman, his physique is still not strong enough to withstand bullets. If he is hit by a bullet, he will still be injured. Due to the distance and the marksmanship, Ghost Rider failed to hit the Thunderbolt in the air. However, Ghost Rider still did not give up. After emptying the original bullets in the magazine, Ghost Rider controlled the hellfire and directly converted the hellfire into bullets for the ghost pistol. Then, he continued to pull the trigger. Bang 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 bang. The unique gunshots continued to sound, breaking the silence of the night. When the Ghost Rider was shooting at him crazily, the Human Torch began to counterattack while dodging. Although he did not have any weapons in his hands, it did not matter to him whether he had weapons or not, because he himself was the best weapon. Boom 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 boom. The Human Torch was like a human bomber, taking advantage of the air advantage and constantly firing cannon-like fireballs at the Ghost Rider. The fight between the Human Torch and the Ghost Rider soon attracted the attention of the surrounding residents. After discovering that the person who fired fireballs in the air like a human bomber was the Human Torch, these residents took out their mobile phones, call the police, and take pictures of the fight between the Human Torch and the Ghost Rider. The hall of the charity dinner. At this time, Richard did not know that the Ghost Rider and the Human Torch had fought, and he had just thrown the pieces of jewelry he had won in the auction into the system space. Although the charity auction has not yet ended, he has no intention of staying. Just as he was about to take Fina out of the hotel and go to Fina's apartment to play poker with the two sisters, Jean Bing came to him with two men. "Mr. Wesley, please stay," Jean Bing said to Richard politely. "What's the matter?" Richard looked at Jean Bing in confusion and replied slowly. "It's like this. I have something I want to talk to you privately, Mr. Wesley. I wonder if it would be convenient to take up a few minutes of your time." Jean Bing continued, looking at Jean Bing, who was so polite that he didn't look like the emperor of the American underworld. Richard didn't think too long and said casually, "Okay." After that, he said to Fina, "Wait for me in the car." "Yeah." Fina nodded, stepped on her stilettos that were almost 10 centimeters long, and walked towards the hotel door. After Fina left, Richard said to Jean Bing, "Lead the way." Although Jean didn't say he wanted to talk somewhere else, it's obvious that the lobby is not a good place to talk. Jean Bing nodded and made a gesture to him to invite him. Then, he walked towards the small negotiation room next to the lobby. After arriving at the door of the negotiation room, Jean Bing asked his men to stay at the door and walked straight in. When Richard and Jean Bing entered the negotiation room, Jean Bing's men immediately closed the door. Richard randomly chose a seat and sat down, and asked directly, "What do you want to talk to me about? If you want me to help you become the underworld emperor of America or even the world, then you don't have to say it. I am not interested in this kind of thing, and I don't think you can give me the reward that interests me." After hearing Richard's words, Jean Bing sat down in front of him, picked up the whiskey on the table, poured him a glass, and said with a smile, "Although I have become the underworld emperor of the world, I don't need to bother you, Mr. Wesley, with this kind of thing." Speaking of this, Jean Bing paused and handed the glass to Richard. Richard did not refuse, took the glass handed by Jean Bing, and took a sip. "It tastes good." Richard nodded with satisfaction. Although he didn't know much about whiskey, he could still tell whether a bottle of whiskey tasted good or not. "It's like this, I have a competitor who I don't know if he is a mutant, but he is quite powerful. I know that you, Mr. Wesley, are not very interested in the underground world, but I hope you can do me this favor. As for the reward, as long as it is something I can do, Mr. Wesley, just ask, I will never bargain." King Bing looked at Richard sincerely, picked up the first folder on the table, and handed it to him. Although he didn't know who King Bing wanted to ask him to deal with, Richard still took the folder and browsed it. "Why is it him?" After seeing the photos in the folder, Richard immediately recognized the person in the photo, and a lot of information flashed through his mind at the same time: Tarot, Shenlong, 10 Rings, Wenwu, Shang-Chi, Soul Devourer. Although he was a little surprised, he didn't show it, and calmly browsed the information prepared by King Bing. Soon, he finished reading the information in the folder and confirmed some content that was not in the information. First is Wenwu, who King Bing wanted him to deal with. Judging from the information provided by King, Wenwu's experience is not the same as in the movie, because according to Kingpin's investigation, the 10 Rings gang ruled by Wenwu has been very active in recent decades and has never stopped its activities. Although ordinary people don't know the existence of the 10 Rings gang, it is not particularly difficult for Kingpin to find out whether the 10 Rings gang has been silent in recent decades. After all, from a certain perspective, Kingpin and Wenwu are also in the same industry. Although their goals are different, the 10 Rings gang is also a member of the underground world. If the 10 Rings gang has been very active in recent decades and has never been silent, it means that Wenwu is most likely not married. Otherwise, he will have the idea of being an ordinary person after the birth of his child, just like in the movie. What a pity. Richard sighed in his heart. He was not feeling sorry for Wenwu, but for not being able to kill Shang-Chi, who forgot his ancestors with his own hands. Shang-Chi's movie is indeed rubbish. But after watching Shang-Chi's movie, Richard was most upset not with Wenwu, but with Shang-Chi, who was brainwashed by American values. He did not deny that Wenwu was indeed not a good person, but compared to that disgusting Shang-Chi, Wenwu has more personality charm. "No. I may not have no chance to kill Shang-Chi." Richard, who was regretting that he could not kill Shang-Chi with his own hands, found that he had overlooked a very important thing: this is not the movie universe. Although in the information given by Kingpin, Wenwu and the 10 Rings look exactly the same as in the movie universe, but this is not the movie universe. This means that if Wenwu in this world has a child, then no matter whether his wife is Yingli in Tarot, his son may be Shang-Chi. This is the same as Franklin Richards in the parallel universe. No matter who the husband of the Invisible Woman is, as long as the Invisible Woman gives birth to a child, then that child will definitely be Franklin. Similarly, if Wenwu in this world has a child, his child will also be Shang-Chi. After realizing this, Richard, who was a little disappointed, suddenly became interested. He didn't care much about what reward Kingpin could give him to deal with Wenwu. He only cared about whether he had a chance to kill Shang-Chi. In other words, as long as the Shang-Chi in this world looks like the one in the movie, he will decisively kill Shang-Chi. After killing Captain America and Dark Phoenix, he was thinking about a question, that is, he no longer needs to hide, and can even live a comfortable life in this world. What should he do next to make himself feel better? After some not very rigorous thinking, he made a decision that fits his personality very well, that is to kill all the people in the Marvel Universe who make him feel disgusted, for example, Shang-Chi, Big Mom, Eternals, etc. Although killing these people will bring some problems, such as killing the Eternals will attract the Celestials, but he still doesn't plan to change this idea. Isn't it just the Celestials? No big deal. As long as it is alive, even gods will be killed. If you can't kill it, it only means that your strength is not enough. Chapter 94 Helpless and Hopeless Gap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Richard closed the folder in his hand with a calm expression and said to Jean Bing. Although you just said that as long as you can do it, you will not bargain. But your promise is not attractive to me. After saying that, Richard threw the documents back on the table, stood up, and prepared to leave the hotel. However, as soon as he stood up, Kingpin immediately said, "Mr. Wesley, please stay. I have something else here that may interest you." After hearing Jean Bing's words, Richard stopped and asked, "What is it?" "A piece of information," Kingpin said quickly. "Intelligence." Richard frowned slightly and said to Jean Bing, "Don't be too pretentious, just tell me directly, what information is it?" If possible, Jean Bing didn't really want to tell Richard this information immediately, because even if only a small part of the content of information is revealed, its value will be greatly reduced, but unfortunately, he has no other choice now. After 2 or 3 seconds of silence, Kingpin said to Richard, "As far as I know, the Department of Mutant Affairs is now preparing a plan to capture you." "Arrest me?" Who gave them the confidence? If before he became an Omega-level mutant, the Department of Mutant Affairs still had a little hope, so, now that he has 2 Omega-level superpowers and numerous character template skills, the possibility of the Department of Mutant Affairs successfully capturing him is infinitely close to zero. After seeing the disdainful expression on Richard's face, Kingpin continued, "I know you are very strong, Mr. Wesley, but my informant told me that the Department of Mutant Affairs has developed a way to deal with you. I don't know the specific method yet. However, the Department of Mutant Affairs is very confident in this capture plan. In addition, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military will also participate in this capture. For other mutants, being captured by the Department of Mutant Affairs, S.H.I.E.L.D., and the military is indeed a very difficult matter, but Richard still didn't think they had any hope of success, not to mention the Department of Mutant Affairs and the military. Richard didn't think they would have high-level combat power that could compete with him. As for S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s trump card is Marvel. If we only look at strength, Captain Marvel's strength is indeed not weak, but Richard doesn't think Captain Marvel can cause him much trouble. After thinking for a few seconds, Richard said to Jean Bing, "It's not impossible if you want me to help you deal with civil and military affairs. It's just that a piece of information and a promise without detailed content are not enough. If you want me to take action, you have to give me something else." Although he didn't know what else Richard wanted, Jean did not hesitate and immediately replied, "Mr. Wesley, what else do you need?" "Keel. You should be familiar with the 5 fingers of the hand. They have something called a dragon bone in their hands. As long as you give me the dragon bones in their hands, I will help you deal with civil and military forces." Richard said calmly, "Although compared to Wenwu, I hate Shang-Chi more, but if Kingpin could really get the dragon bone, he wouldn't mind doing Kingpin a small favor." Keel. Kingpin had not heard of the existence of dragon bones before. Although he didn't know what the so-called keel was, he didn't think for too long and said quickly, "No problem. Since you want it, Mr. Wesley, I will deliver the dragon bones in their hands to you." Jean Bing looked at Richard with a confident face. Richard nodded and left the negotiation room without saying anything else. As he walked towards the hotel door, he saw the hotel employees and the guests in the hotel lobby looking intently at the mobile phones in their hands. Although he didn't know what was going on, he took out his mobile phone and opened a popular news website. Then he knew why the hotel employees and guests were staring at their phones. The Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider are fighting in Brooklyn. After seeing the news, Richard did not hesitate and started teleportation directly in the hotel lobby. In just a moment, he arrived in Brooklyn from the hotel lobby. To be precise, we came to the neighborhood where the Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider were fighting. At this time, the Ghost Rider was 1 against 4, relying on his own power to resist the Fantastic Four's attack. Although he was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers, Ghost Rider had an absolute advantage in terms of the scene. The Fantastic Four's attack did not cause any harm to Ghost Rider. the flames on Ghost Rider's body look no different from ordinary flames, but both the temperature and the range of application are much stronger than ordinary flames. Hellfire is a supernatural flame coming from the depths of hell and is not bound by any natural laws, whether it is water or a vacuum environment. It will not have any impact on the fire of hell, compared with the hellfire on Ghost Rider, the flames produced by the Human Torch are much inferior. Although it is possible to transform oneself into a pyromaniac, the flames produced by the Human Torch are natural flames. To put it simply, it will extinguish when it encounters water, and it cannot burn without oxygen. The Human Torch in the comics can produce a nova-level explosion with a temperature of up to 1 million degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than 550,000 degrees Celsius, but it is obvious that the Human Torch in this universe is far less powerful than in the comics. After performing teleportation to the roof of a nearby building, Richard did not immediately take action against Ghost Rider, but instead watched the fight between the Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider with interest. Like the Human Torch, Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, and the Thing did not know what kind of existence Ghost Rider was. They appeared here to fight Ghost Rider for the same reason as Richard. However, the report they saw was not Fantastic Four vs Flame Skeleton, but Human Torch vs Flame Skeleton. After seeing the Human Torch fighting with the unknown Flame Skeleton in Brooklyn, Mr. Fantastic and his 3 friends immediately rushed over to try to stop Ghost Rider, without any surprise. The actions of Mr. Fantastic and his 3 friends also put them on the list of Ghost Rider's trial tonight. Mr. Fantastic and his 3 friends originally thought that they could easily take down Ghost Rider, but it turned out that they overestimated themselves. However, they soon discovered that Ghost Rider was not as easy to deal with as they thought, because all their attempts to extinguish the hellfire failed. Not only that, the Stone Man was also seriously injured in the counterattack of the Ghost Rider. The Stone Man does have a very amazing defensive power, but in front of the hellfire, his rock body is not indestructible. The burning of the hellfire made the originally orange-yellow Stone Man become as black as coal. In addition to the blackening of his appearance, the Stone Man also felt the pain he had not felt for a long time. To be precise, it was a strong pain that was heart-wrenching. If the time of being burned by the hellfire was not very long, only a few seconds, the Fantastic Four could be renamed the Fantastic Three from tomorrow. Not only did the Stone Man himself not expect that he would be burned, but Mr. Fantastic and the other 2 also did not expect it. However, this also made them sure of one thing, that is, the fire on the Ghost Rider was not simple. The injured Thing is now lying in front of a violently opened fire hydrant, using the water gushing out of the fire hydrant to relieve the pain on his body. Without the Thing as a tank and meat shield, Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman immediately became flustered. The flying Human Torch does not need to worry about Ghost Rider riding a ghost motorcycle hitting him, but Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman are not as lucky as him. Even the Thing can't resist the hellfire of Ghost Rider, let alone the 2 of them. If it weren't for the Invisible Woman who could create a force field that made them invisible and resisted the collision of the ghost motorcycle, otherwise, their fate would be worse than that of the Thing. After standing on the roof of a nearby building and watching for a few minutes, Richard mobilized his magic power to turn his handmade custom suit into a black windbreaker of the same style as Sephiroth. Then, he took out the authentic Yama sword from the system space. The authentic Yama sword is the authentic sword that has been fused with the Yama sword. In order to distinguish them easily, Richard named the genuine sword that merged with the Yama sword as the genuine Yama sword, Telepathy. After taking out the genuine Yama sword, Richard directly performed telepathy and came to Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman, who were shrouded in the invisible force field. Although the 2 of them were shrouded in the invisible force field and could not be discovered by the naked eye, but for Richard, who has alpha-level telepathy, he can easily lock their positions with his eyes closed. You can't deal with him. Take Jonathan and Ben to rest. This guy is my prey, Richard said to Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman, although he didn't know why he called the Ghost Rider the prey. After hearing his words, the Invisible Woman immediately lifted the invisible force field and said to him, "Then I'll trouble you." "You're welcome." After that, Richard walked slowly towards the Ghost Rider riding the ghost motorcycle. The Ghost Rider didn't know Richard. But after Richard appeared, he immediately saw the sin in Richard that far exceeded that of others. Without any hesitation, Ghost Rider immediately drove the ghost motorcycle straight towards him. the tires wrapped by the Hellfire left extremely clear traces of movement on the street. Soon, the Ghost Rider riding the Ghost motorcycle came in front of Richard. Just when the Ghost motorcycle was about to hit him, he finally raised the authentic Yama sword in his hand. 8 swords flashed. 8 smooth and lightning-fast slashes were swung out in an instant. Chi 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 chi. Although the Ghost Rider was shrouded by the Hellfire, the Ghost motorcycle demonized by the Hellfire was much stronger than an ordinary motorcycle, but in front of the 8 swords flash performed by Richard, both the Ghost Rider and the Ghost motorcycle were as fragile as cream cakes. In just a blink of an eye, the Ghost Rider and the Ghost motorcycle were chopped into dozens of pieces by the authentic sword and scattered all over the ground under the action of inertia. After seeing this scene, except for Mr. Magic who had calculated Richard's strength in detail and remained calm, whether it was the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, or the surrounding police and the people who were unwilling to evacuate, they all showed surprised expressions. They knew that Richard was very strong. But they didn't expect that Richard was so strong. The Ghost Rider who made them helpless was so vulnerable in front of Richard. Is this his true strength? The Thunderbolt, floating in the air, frowned immediately. Although he had watched Richard's fighting videos online, he never felt that Richard was much stronger than himself. It was normal for him to feel this way. To give a simple example, many boxing enthusiasts and guys who only know how to talk will also feel that Tyson and Ali are nothing special when watching Tyson and Ali's ring videos online. They don't know that any professional boxer has the ability to make them experience baby-like sleep with one punch. As for professional boxers like Tyson and Ali who can be crowned as boxing champions, dealing with them is not much more difficult than dealing with a newborn baby. The Thunderbolt used to think that Richard was not stronger than himself, or even if he was stronger than himself, he was not much stronger, because he had never fought with Richard's enemies. Even those mutant agents, who seemed to be powerless in front of Richard, were not easy for him to deal with. As for Black King Shaw, Magneto's clones, the director and deputy director of the Mutant Affairs Department, etc., they were far stronger than him. They died in Richard's hands, not because they were weak, but because Richard was stronger than them. After seeing Richard easily chop the Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle that the 4 of them were helpless against into dozens of pieces, Thunderbolt finally knew why. Mr. Fantastic said that the probability of him defeating Richard would not exceed 0.036% on the day of Professor X's funeral. What a desperate gap. Although he knew that the probability calculated by Mr. Fantastic was correct, he was still somewhat unconvinced before witnessing this scene with his own eyes. Now, he no longer has any unconvinced, but began to envy Richard. If only I had his strength. Thunderbolt sighed in his heart. At the same time, he imagined a beautiful picture of himself having the same powerful strength as Richard. Richard ignored the gazes of Thunderbolt, Invisible Woman and others, and his eyes fell on the Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle that he had chopped into dozens of pieces. Under his gaze, the Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle, which were already in ruins, began to reassemble and recover under the special ability of Hellfire. It only took 5 or 6 seconds for Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle to return to their original appearance, as if everything just now was just an illusion. After seeing Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle recover, Richard once again swung out the authentic Yama blade. However, this time he did not perform the 8 blades flash, but performed the earth-shaking. 4 slashes instantly passed through the Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle that had just recovered. Just like before, Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle were once again chopped into large and small debris. Because there were only 4 slashes, they were only chopped into a dozen or 20 pieces. This time, just like before, the chopped Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle quickly recovered under the repair of Hellfire. Although the number has decreased, Richard keenly discovered that the recovery of Ghost Rider and Ghost motorcycle took more time. To be precise, it took about 0.1 seconds more than before. After discovering this, Richard smiled with satisfaction. Because he can now be sure that he will definitely plunder the extraordinary power of the Spirit of Vengeance tonight. The recovered Ghost Rider did not have time to do anything, and was once again chopped into debris by the 8 swords. Being chopped into debris, restored by the repair of Hellfire, and continued to be chopped into debris. Under the gaze of Thunderbolt and Invisible Woman, Ghost Rider was slaughtered by Richard over and over again like an ordinary person who had no power to fight back. Time passed by little, unknowingly. Ghost Rider was chopped into pieces by Richard dozens of times. If at the beginning, Thunderbolt and the others did not know what Richard was planning, then now, they all guessed Richard's purpose: he is consuming the energy of Ghost Rider. Although they didn't know why Richard did this, they were sure of one thing, that is, Richard knew Ghost Rider very well. Ghost Rider did try to fight back against Richard, but no matter how he fought back, the final result was that he was chopped into pieces by Richard. Strictly speaking, Ghost Rider's strength is not weak, otherwise, Mr. Fantastic and the others would not be helpless against Ghost Rider, but unfortunately, Ghost Rider's means could not threaten Richard, not to mention Hellfire and Chain Technique. Even the Eye of Judgment and the Eye of Scourge could not threaten Richard. As for the reason, it was very simple: Richard would not give Ghost Rider the opportunity to lock him, let alone the opportunity to hit him. Not only that, his X-Gene superpowers also gave him all-round protection. Energy absorption can absorb the energy of Hellfire, telepathy can prevent him from being locked by Ghost Rider, and telepathy can be immune to the mind-reading induction of the Eye of Judgment, not to mention that he can also control gravity and magnetic fields. Playing with Ghost Rider in his hands, if he had to have a shortcoming, it would be that he had not mastered any skills related to the soul. However, this was not a serious problem, after plundering the extraordinary abilities of the Spirit of Vengeance, he will soon have the skills of the Soul Realm. After being chopped to pieces by Richard for hundreds of times, the Spirit of Vengeance in the Ghost Rider was completely angry. Since the day it was born, it has never suffered such grievances. After being chopped to pieces by Richard with 8 swords again, the Spirit of Vengeance did not continue to control the Hellfire to restore the host, but began to self-destruct. Under the control of the Spirit of Vengeance, a large amount of Hellfire gushed out of the remains of the Ghost Rider, and the gushing Hellfire quickly condensed into a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 5 meters. The plan of the Spirit of Vengeance is very simple, that is, to use self-destruction to force Richard back, then, use its own immortal characteristics and Hellfire to quickly restore the host, and use the opportunity created by self-destruction to stay away from Richard, who is like the god of death. It is not surprising that the Spirit of Vengeance has such a plan, because the Spirit of Vengeance does not have a high IQ. Although they also have independent consciousness, they are used to acting on instinct. Chapter 95, Verbal Criticism, 4K Chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After seeing the Hellfire coming out of the wreckage of Ghost Rider condense into a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 5 meters, not only Richard guessed the purpose of the Spirit of Vengeance, but Invisible Woman and Thunderbolt also guessed it. The onlookers who were unwilling to evacuate before and insisted on staying at the scene to watch the excitement were stunned for a second or two when they saw this scene. Then, they ran madly as if fleeing, although they didn't know what. The Ghost Rider and the Spirit of Vengeance were. They were not stupid. After seeing the stone man burned into charcoal by the Hellfire, they knew that the Hellfire on the body of the Ghost Rider was not an ordinary flame. As for the huge fireball that appeared now, it is clear that this is definitely a large-scale attack move. It was not only the onlookers who ran madly. After seeing this scene, the surrounding New York police also began to flee. Only a few $1,000s a month, what's the point of playing with your life? When the onlookers and New York police quickly evacuated, Invisible Woman and the other 2 also tried to evacuate with the stone man. However, compared with the crazy running onlookers and New York police, their speed was more than a little slower. Although the 3 invisible women had superpowers, it was not easy for them to evacuate quickly with the stone man who was as heavy as a stone. None of them had superpowers, and the superpowers they had were not suitable for evacuating quickly with. The stone man, after seeing the huge fireball condensed by the Spirit of Vengeance becoming more and more dazzling, the Invisible Woman immediately used her superpowers to create a defensive force field to cover herself and Mr. Fantastic. Boom! Within a few seconds, the huge fireball condensed by the Spirit of Vengeance exploded like a small nuclear bomb. The huge explosion sounded not only throughout the Brooklyn area, but also clearly reached the ears of residents in other districts of New York. The shock wave generated by the explosion swept around with amazing power, and spread out 1 or 2 kilometers in the blink of an eye. The golden mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the flames of the explosion made New York, which was originally at night, become as bright as day, and the earth shook violently like an earthquake. As the person closest to the center of the explosion, Richard did not evacuate. Although the self-destruction attack created by the power of revenge was indeed very strong, it still did not threaten him. Before the huge fireball exploded, he used all his strength to absorb energy and protected himself 360 degrees without dead angles. He had not tested the limit of energy absorption before, however. He was not worried about being injured, not to mention that energy absorption is an enhanced alpha level superpower. Even if the power of the self-destruction of the spirit of revenge exceeded the limit of energy absorption, it would not threaten him with his alpha-level super physique and super self-healing. The terrifying shock wave and the blinding light generated by the explosion did not last long, and disappeared after only a few seconds. Although the shock wave and the strong light disappeared, the flying dust raised by the explosion and the golden mushroom cloud that rose into the sky did not disappear together. Richard ignored these and locked the recovering Ghost Rider with telepathy. The wreckage of the Ghost Rider was blown away by the shock wave of the explosion early in the morning, not to mention his wreckage. Even the surrounding reinforced concrete buildings were destroyed by the shock wave of the explosion. Although it is unknown where the wreckage was blown away, it did not affect the recovery of Ghost Rider at all. In the center of the golden mushroom cloud, the hellfire quickly condensed into a human shape. Then, the skeletons of Ghost Rider appeared one by one in the hellfire. Compared with the beginning, the recovery speed of Ghost Rider is not ordinary slow. It took almost 10 seconds for Ghost Rider to restore his complete skeleton form. As for the original leather clothes and jeans on his body, they have disappeared now. The spirit of vengeance, which has consumed a lot of energy, is not in the mood to care whether the host is running naked, or, even if he runs naked, no one will care. They are all skeletons. It doesn't matter whether he wears clothes or not. After using the remaining little energy to restore the host, the spirit of vengeance directly took over the body of Ghost Rider, ready to leave as quickly as possible, temporarily giving up the judgment on Richard. However, as soon as the spirit of vengeance, which had taken over the body of Ghost Rider, came out of the golden mushroom cloud, it saw Richard holding two samurai swords, one long and one short, looking at it with satisfaction. The moment it saw Richard, the spirit of vengeance immediately had a strong intuition of death that it had only felt 6,000 years ago. At that time, it had just descended from heaven to the earth in the form of fire rain, and had not yet begun to devour its own kind to improve itself, and was far less powerful than it is now. In the battles with other similar people, it also had several intuitions of death, but the intuition of death generated at that time was far less strong than it is now. Although it didn't know why it felt such a strong intuition of death in Richard, it chose to believe in its intuition and immediately mobilized the remaining little energy. When the spirit of vengeance began to use the remaining little energy, the hellfire covering the Ghost Rider burned more fiercely. And at this moment, under the gaze of the spirit of vengeance, Richard raised the Yama blade in his hand. Richard didn't waste any more time, flashed in front of the Ghost Rider, and swung the Yama blade in his right hand with lightning. Separation. The Yama blade encountered no obstruction and slashed through the Ghost Rider's body as if it was slicing through the air. On the surface, his attack did not cause any harm to Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance possessed by Ghost Rider had a completely different view. The spirit of vengeance, which had already merged with the host's soul, felt a powerful separation ability that he had never felt before. This strange and powerful separation ability forcibly dissolved its fusion with the host. At the same time, it was pulled out of the host's body. For ordinary people, it is very difficult to separate the spirit of vengeance that has merged with the host's soul, but for Richard, it is not a difficult task. In fact, the method of separating the spirit of vengeance from the host is not uncommon in the Marvel Universe. There are several methods that have appeared in comics alone. For example, the sacred weapons made of heaven-paving bricks, the black magic of the hand, the spell of Mephisto, etc. As long as the right method is used, it is not difficult to separate the spirit of vengeance from the host. Under Richard's gaze, a fist-sized golden ball of light flew out of Ghost Rider's body. As the golden ball of light left the body, the hellfire on the Ghost Rider disappeared without a trace, and the body changed from the original skeletal form back to normal flesh and blood. Who is this guy? After seeing the Ghost Rider who had recovered his human form, Richard frowned slightly. He thought that the Ghost Rider who appeared tonight would be one of the first, second, and third generations. However, it turned out that he guessed wrong. The Ghost Rider who had recovered his human form was a black man in his 30s or 40s. Although black Ghost Riders have appeared in comics, for example, Caleb, the Ghost Rider during the American Civil War, was a black man, but it was obvious that the middle-aged black man in front of him was not Caleb. although he didn't know who this middle-aged black man was. Richard didn't hesitate at all, and the authentic knife in his left hand flashed out. No matter who the Ghost Rider in this world is, he doesn't intend to spare his life. It has come to this point. If he still lets the other party go, it would be too unreasonable. The spirit of vengeance wants to kill, and the host also wants to kill. Swish. As the authentic knife passed, the middle-aged black man's head flew high like a basketball shot. After killing the middle-aged black man who had no impression at all, Richard's eyes fell on the golden ball of light, or more precisely, on the spirit of vengeance. After separating from the host, the spirit of vengeance tried to leave as quickly as possible, but soon, it found that it was overthinking. Magnetic field binding. The moment the spirit of vengeance was separated, Richard used his superpower of magnetic field control to create an ultra-high-intensity magnetic field that could not be detected by the naked eye, binding the spirit of vengeance. After fusing the Yama knife back to the authentic knife, Richard stretched out his right hand and directly grabbed the body of the spirit of vengeance. Energy absorption. The moment he touched the body of the spirit of vengeance, the little energy in the spirit of vengeance was absorbed crazily by him. After only 2 or 3 seconds, the spirit of vengeance completely dimmed, and its size changed from the original fist size to the size of an egg. Although there was not much energy left in the spirit of vengeance, Richard still did not stop absorbing it. After another 5 or 6 seconds, the egg-sized spirit of vengeance became the size of a grain of sand. Finally, it completely disappeared. Plunder. After using energy absorption to drain the spirit of vengeance alive, Richard immediately performed Omega-level Plunder. New ability, Hellfire. Hellfire, a supernatural flame originating from the depths of hell, not restricted by natural laws, with the abilities of demonization, materialization, recovery, burning souls, and transformation into evil spirits. After reading the system introduction, Richard smiled with satisfaction. Because it is not an X-gene superpower, Hellfire is not integrated with other superpowers of the same type, nor is it divided into specific levels. However, this is not a very important matter. After turning off the information panel, Richard turned his head and glanced at the 4 invisible women. The self-destruction attack performed by the spirit of vengeance just now was indeed very strong, but the defensive force field of the invisible women was not weak either. Although the defensive force field she created showed signs of collapse, none of the 4 of them were injured in the self-destruction attack of the spirit of vengeance. As for the onlookers and the New York police, they were not so lucky. Richard could confirm that 200 or 300 people died in the self-explosion attack of the spirit of vengeance by just using telepathy. Under the gaze of the 4 invisible women, he did nothing but used teleportation to leave and return to the hotel entrance. "Where do you live?" After returning to the car, Richard said to Fina, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, "Huh." Fina had already prepared herself to go home alone tonight. After hearing Richard's words, she looked at Richard with a surprised look. Although she had been staying in the car, she also saw the live broadcast of Richard's fight with the Ghost Rider on the internet. Not only that, when the live broadcast was suddenly interrupted, she was a little worried about whether Richard would be injured. In her opinion, Richard, who had just finished the battle, should not be in much mood to play poker with her 2 sisters. After all, they had played once before. Unexpectedly, after Richard returned to the car, the first thing he said was to ask her where she lived. Although it was a little unexpected, Fina immediately told Richard the address of the apartment. Then, she took out her mobile phone and sent a text message to her sister in the apartment, asking her to get ready. At noon the next day, Fina's apartment. Richard removed the arms and thighs that Fina and her sister had placed on him, got up, found his clothes from the clothes scattered on the ground and put them on. "Are you going back?" Fina looked at Richard with sleepy eyes and asked reluctantly. "Yeah." Richard nodded. After hearing his words, Fina first showed a disappointed expression, then she quickly got up and came to him, serving him like a maid. Soon, Richard put on his clothes. Under Fina's gaze, he performed teleportation, disappeared in an instant, and came to the underground garage. Then, he drove the Aston Martin antique car towards the manor. Although he did not return to the manor last night, he sent a text message to the White Queen before playing poker with the Fina sisters, so that the White Queen would not think that he was killed by the Ghost Rider last night. At this time, he did not know that he had aroused public anger in New York and became a murderer who was criticized by people. In the early hours of last night, the heads of major TV stations and newspapers in New York received calls from the authorities. In addition, they also received the accurate casualties of last night. The death toll was 276 and the number of injured was 851, although the incidental economic losses have not been counted. This is not the point, at least for the officials. This is not the point. At the request of the officials, major TV stations and newspapers in New York reported the battle between Richard and the Ghost Rider very fairly. Then, he became a murderer who was criticized. S.H.I.L.D. Triskelion Headquarters. The Director's Office. What are those people in the White House thinking? Are they all crazy, or are they so arrogant that they think they can manipulate Richard? Let the media deliberately mislead the public and throw dirty water on him. Aren't they afraid that Richard will come to visit them in person? Natasha, who was wearing a tight black uniform and perfectly showing her sexy curves, sat in front of Nick Fury and said with a frown. They are not crazy, and they are not arrogant. As for whether Richard will come to visit them, it depends on whether he is determined to be an enemy of the whole world. Nick Fury said slowly. Natasha looked at Nick Fury in confusion. Although Nick Fury said it very obscurely, a guess immediately flashed through her mind. I don't know what you have prepared, but my intuition tells me that Richard is not as easy to deal with as you think. In addition, no matter what plan you have, Banner and I will not participate. After speaking, Natasha stood up and turned away without waiting for Nick Fury to answer. Nick Fury didn't take Natasha's attitude to heart. Or rather, when he recruited Natasha into S.H.I.E.L.D., he knew that Natasha was not the kind of subordinate who would obey obediently. When Natasha left the office, Nick Fury took out his mobile phone and dialed the number of the head of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s New York branch. Soon, the call was connected. From now on, report the latest situation to me every hour. I want to know all of Richard Wesley's next actions. What he did, who he met, and what he ate. I want to know everything. Nick Fury said with a serious face. Chapter 96, Self-Righteous Idiot, 4K Large Chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Silver Manor. As soon as he returned to the manor, Richard heard from the White Queen that he was being criticized by the public. He guessed that he would be the headline of major TV stations and newspapers today, but he did not expect that the reports given by major TV stations and newspapers in New York were surprisingly consistent. These TV stations and newspapers, without exception, all led the public to believe that he was the cause of the heavy casualties last night. Who will protect ordinary people? Tragic casualties that could have been avoided. Save people or kill people. The king of mutants who does whatever he wants. Hero. No, it's a murderer. Although it was a bit unexpected, Richard quickly guessed that these TV stations and newspapers gave such consistent reports, which were all promoted by the authorities behind the scenes. Not only that, after reading these reports online, he also guessed what the authorities were planning. Test. The authorities planned to guide public opinion to test him. As for why the authorities did this, it was not difficult to guess, let alone that Kingpin had told him last night that the Mutant Affairs Department was preparing a plan to capture him. Even without the information revealed by Jean Bing, just by looking at today's report, you can know what the authorities are planning. After enduring for more than 3 months, the U.S. authorities finally decided to take action to solve this trouble. That made people sleepless. Guiding public opinion to test his reaction, if nothing unexpected happens, is the first step. Is it because I have been attending banquets from time to time in the past few months, making them think that I care about the outside evaluation like everyone else? Richard said to the White Queen sitting next to him. As long as you are still alive and not their subordinates, they will never give up dealing with you. Although public opinion cannot cause physical harm to you, it can label you as a villain. If everyone thinks you are a villain, even if they don't take action, there will be many self-proclaimed righteous guys coming to deal with you. The White Queen said slowly. Like Richard, after seeing that major TV stations and newspapers gave reports with the same point of view, she knew that this was the officials' handiwork. If there is no official indication, these competing TV stations and newspapers will never be so united. I know they want to label me as a villain, but I'm curious, who gave them the courage? Aren't they afraid that I'll go to the White House and the Pentagon to find them in anger? Richard continued. Maybe they have already prepared a way to deal with you, just waiting for you to go there. Of course, it is not ruled out that they are too arrogant. The White Queen said slowly. Forget it, I don't want to think about it. Since they deliberately guide the public and use public opinion to test me, then I'll play with them. Come to think of it, I don't seem to have ever been interviewed by a reporter. Richard took out his mobile phone and said with a smile. Are you going to be interviewed? The White Queen looked at Richard with surprise. They have made such a big scene. If I don't respond to them, it would be too disrespectful to them. Richard said as he flipped through the address book. Soon, he found a suitable candidate in the address book, Anna Kraus. Reporter, blonde, 176, 7.5 points. This Anna Kraus was none other than the blonde female reporter who had asked Fadilai Trask questions at the X-Gene Cure Drug Conference last time. Richard didn't remember her name at the time, but only remembered that she had a good figure and a pair of long legs like spring water by the Seine River. After deciding to accept the interview with the reporter and give a shocking response to the U.S. officials and the public, he immediately thought of Anna Kraus. Just as he was about to call Anna Kraus and ask her to prepare an interview, his cell phone rang. Tony. After seeing the name on the screen, Richard quickly guessed why Tony called. After the call was connected, Tony's voice rang immediately. Now all the TV stations and newspapers are denouncing you. Do you need my help? I am a major shareholder of several of the TV stations and newspapers. Tony said quickly. No, you don't need to help with this little thing. You should just focus on building that anti-Richard armor. Richard replied. You don't need to remind me. I have been designing the anti-Richard armor. If nothing goes wrong, it will be completed in a few months. Since you don't need my help, forget it. After saying that, Tony hung up the phone immediately. Although he knew that Tony was kind, Richard could easily solve this public opinion crisis even without Tony's help. After Tony hung up the phone, he immediately dialed Anna's number. In a few seconds, the call was connected. Before Anna spoke, Richard said directly, help me prepare a live interview. The time is 3 days later. I am going to respond to the battle last night. After hearing Richard's words, Anna on the other end of the phone was stunned. Are you serious? After a few seconds, she asked in disbelief. Of course I am serious. Didn't you always want me to accept your interview before? I decided to fulfill your wish. Richard said calmly. Okay. I will contact the director right away and help you prepare for the live interview in 3 days. Are you going to be interviewed on the TV station, or somewhere else? Anna asked quickly, fearing that Richard would regret it. Just your TV station. By the way, I really like the gray OL outfit you wore at the last X-Gene Healing Potion conference. You should wear that outfit then. Richard continued. What about inside, what do you want me to wear underneath? Anna said in an ambiguous tone. Whatever you want, it's fine. That's it, hang up first. After saying that, Richard hung up the phone and turned to look at the White Queen sitting next to him. As he expected, the White Queen's expression was calm, with no sign of anger at all. The White Queen was not generally open to the fact that he frequently communicated in depth with celebrities, ladies, reporters, models, stewardesses, etc. outside. In her words, toys delivered to your door for free are nothing if you don't play with them. Why did it take 3 days to get interviewed? The White Queen asked doubtfully. You have to give public opinion time to ferment, so that my response will be effective enough. Richard said with a smile, although he did not explicitly say how he planned to respond to the unexpected casualties caused by last night's battle. The White Queen could vaguely guess. Having followed Richard for several months, she understood not only 100% of what kind of person he was, but at least had a vague understanding of him. To put it simply, Richard is a very freewheeling person who takes soft things rather than hard ones. If people respect me 1 foot, I will respect others 1 foot. If someone destroys me, I will take away 3 fights from him. This is his style. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. 7:50 p.m. Richard came to the TV station where Anna was. However, he did not drive over, but directly used teleportation to come to the studio. In addition, he did not deliberately put on a hand-tailored suit, but came in casual clothes. Although this was his first live interview, he didn't think it was important. His arrival immediately silenced the busy studio, whether it was Anna or others. Their eyes unconsciously focused on him. It took several seconds for Anna to react and start arranging for the staff to put a microphone on him. At the same time, Richard took stock of Anna's outfit today. Just as he requested, Anna tonight was wearing the gray OL suit from the X-Gene Healing Potion Conference. Gray jacket and skirt, pink shirt. Although she wasn't wearing stockings, her long, round and white legs were still eye-catching. After seeing Richard's eyes falling directly on her legs, Anna showed a satisfied smile. Her long, straight legs are the part of her body that she is most satisfied with. In addition, she also knows very well how tempting such a pair of long legs are to men. After putting on the microphone, Richard sat down on the sofa opposite Anna. "This is the next interview question, please read it first. If you feel that any of them are inappropriate, you can cancel it." Anna handed the interview script in her hand to Richard and said softly. After taking a look at the contents of the interview script, Richard said casually, "No problem, just ask." "Good." Anna nodded, although she didn't know why Richard, who had never given interviews before, took the initiative to call her. One thing she was sure of was that tonight's interview would definitely become big news that would shock the entire United States, not to mention that Richard is known as the King of Mutants. The public opinion that has become increasingly fierce in the past few days alone can make tonight's interview gain unprecedented popularity, as Richard expected. After the public opinion fermented for a few days, more and more people protested, opposed, and asked him to give an explanation. Just before he came to the TV station, there were many excited people protesting at the gate of Bayeen Manor. Although these excited people held banners and cards and protested loudly outside the manor, their protests had no impact on his life. First, the sound insulation of the main building of the manor is very good. Second, the New York Police Department took the initiative to send a large number of police officers to maintain order at the gate of the manor to prevent these protesting guys from taking excessive actions. Although all this was planned by U.S. officials, they did not want to see these protesting people break into the manor, because there are castle laws and stand-your-ground laws in the United States. Castle law means that within one's legal residence, or within the castle area specified in the law, one can use any means, including lethal means, to defend one's property and personal safety without being prosecuted. Stand-your-ground laws allow people to defend their territory without any warning to retreat, as long as they believe that an intruder will pose a threat to their lives and seize their property. In terms of content, there is no difference between the castle method and the stand-your-ground method, but in most states, castle laws are limited to the home. Stand-your-ground laws apply not only to homes, but also to workplaces and vehicles. What the U.S. government wants to see is Richard unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion and take radical actions, rather than ordinary people taking radical actions. If these protesters broke into the manor, it would be completely legal for Richard to cut them into pieces. 8 o'clock in the evening, the live interview started on time. After a procedural opening speech, Anna asked Richard, "First of all, thank you Mr. Wesley for accepting this interview. The battle 3 days ago caused many innocent people to be killed and injured, and caused a lot of discussion and protests. I wonder if you have any explanation for this matter." After Anna finished speaking, Richard said slowly, "I don't think there is anything to explain about this." "Do you mean you don't want to explain to the outside world, or do you feel you have no obligation to explain?" Anna continued to ask. "Neither. I mean, you all misunderstood something," Richard said calmly. "Misunderstood something? Mr. Wesley, can you explain it in detail?" Anna asked puzzled. "Of course. I've seen all the reports and protests these days. I just want to ask you a question. Who told you I was going to save people?" Richard's tone became cold, and he turned to look at the camera. "You are too self-righteous. I would appear there and kill that man just because I wanted to do it. If you didn't hear clearly, I'll say it again, I only did it because I wanted to kill him. Saving people leads to casualties among innocent people. Don't be ridiculous. Even if I want to save people, I definitely won't save you self-righteous idiots. You don't run when you encounter danger, but stay there and watch the show stupidly. You deserve to die. In addition, according to what you said, mutants and ordinary people are two completely different races. You are neither my kind nor my friends. what obligation do I have to save you? As for your protests and oppositions, do you think I will take such things to heart? I can tell you very clearly now that the White House will the cancellation of the S-Class Wanted order on me was not because the director and deputy director of the Mutant Affairs Department were corrupt, but because I killed them. To be precise, I killed them, the director of the Operations Department, and all the mutant agents in the headquarters. By the way, let me tell you one more thing. The Captain America Steve Rogers, whom you admire and respect, was not on a secret mission, but was killed by me on the same day. Don't you want me to give you an explanation? This is my explanation. You all know where my manor is. If you are not convinced, I welcome you to come to me at any time to ask for a new explanation, as long as you have the strength to do so. Finally, I will give you another reminder, don't do anything that will anger me or make me unhappy. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences yourself. Chapter 97 My Rules Are Rules, 5K Chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Whether it was Anna sitting opposite Richard, or other staff members in the studio, or ordinary viewers who were watching the live interview, they all showed shocked expressions after hearing his words. What is he doing? Threatening all citizens. Is he going to be an enemy of the whole world? Unlike Anna and others and ordinary viewers, after hearing Richard's undisguised threats and intimidation, the mutants who were watching the live broadcast had an indescribable sense of pride, although Richard threatened those ordinary people who denounced him because he was criticized, but for other mutants, what he just said was also their voice. That's right. Those ordinary people are self-righteous idiots. A group of idiots who think that everything should consider their feelings and put them first. Why do we need to consider your feelings? When issuing the mutant restriction bill, did you consider our feelings? Because Richard let the public opinion ferment for 3 days, the mutants who admired him were a little disappointed, thinking that he had become weak and was no longer the idol who dared to go against the Mutant Affairs Department. Now, they found that they thought too much. Richard has not changed. Not only that, he is more domineering than before. Before, he only went against the Mutant Affairs Department, and now, he is ruthlessly threatening those self-righteous ordinary people in front of the live broadcast. Although Anna did not expect Richard to say such a thing in the live broadcast, her excellent professional quality made her calm down quickly. Then, he said to Richard. Mr. Wesley, you just said that the Minister and Deputy Minister of the Department of Mutant Affairs and Captain America Rogers were all killed by you. Are you admitting your crime? After hearing Anna's words, Richard smiled and shook his head, and said slowly, crime? It seems that I have an obligation to make up for you. The so-called law is nothing more than what the ruling class has made to maintain its own rule. In other words, the law you are talking about is nothing more than what the politicians headed by the White House have made to rule ordinary people like you. From the day I set fire to the Wesley family's manor with my own hands, I told myself that even if I died in battle, I would not accept anyone's rule. I don't think I have committed a crime, and I don't think I need to abide by the laws made by your officials, and I don't think they have the qualifications to judge me. No one is qualified to judge me except myself. Not humans, not gods. My life, I have the final say. That if he had only threatened and intimidated the ordinary people who protested and denounced him before, so now, he is denying the legitimate right of the U.S. government to rule in front of all the audience. I admit that you have the right to rule, so you are the rulers. I don't admit it. You are just a group of ants who don't know the height of the sky and the depth of the earth. But you still killed someone after all. Anna frowned. The development of the matter has completely exceeded her expectations. She is no longer thinking about how much fame this live interview can bring her, but how much impact Richard's words will have after the live broadcast. As we all know, Richard's appeal in the mutant community is not ordinary, not to mention other places. There are more than 4.5 million mutants who worship him as an idol in the United States alone. When he, an idol, publicly denied the legitimate right of the U.S. government to rule in a live broadcast, it is not difficult to guess what the mutants who regarded him as an idol will do next. Yes, I killed someone, but is there any problem with that? Richard asked Anna calmly. Although Anna is a well-known journalist with outstanding experience and ability, Richard's answer still surprised her. To be precise, from the beginning of the live broadcast, all of Richard's answers were beyond her expectations. For a moment, Anna didn't know what to say next. At this moment, Richard's voice rang out. From the perspective of depriving others of their lives, I did kill people. But aren't there many cases of depriving others of their lives on this land? You are all Native Americans. I don't need to remind you who the original owner of this land was, right? Because the Indians are not as strong as you occupied their land, massacred them as native people, and took this land that did not originally belong to you as your own, and established the so-called regime here. Whether before, after, or now, your officials have been depriving other people of their lives. The number of people who died in my hands is not even a fraction of the number who died in the hands of your officials. If I am guilty, your officials are even more guilty. You may think that I am making excuses or quibbling. What you think is your business and has nothing to do with me. I only know that rules are made by the strong. I am stronger than any of you. I did not make rules for you, so you should be grateful. No matter how long you keep talking, I don't mind letting you experience what the Indians experienced back then. Now that I've come to this point, let me show you what my rules means. It's 8:06 p.m. now. I'm announcing 3 of my rules. First, all mutants have the right to freely use their superpowers, and the Mutant Restriction Act must be lifted within 12 hours. Second, I don't like the Mutant Affairs Department, so the Mutant Affairs Department must also be disbanded within 12 hours. Third, any research and development, manufacturing, and promotion of drugs and weapons targeting mutants is a provocation to me. I never show mercy to those who provoke me. You only have 12 hours to consider whether you want to abide by my rules. Follow my rules. I don't mind living in peace with you. If you don't abide by my rules, or continue to play tricks behind my back, I'll accompany you to the end. After speaking, Richard didn't hesitate at all, and directly performed teleportation, disappearing in an instant. Washington, D.C., S.H.I.L.D. Triskelion Headquarters, Director's Office. Like everyone else, S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury is now watching Richard's live interview. To be precise, in addition to him, Natasha and Hawkeye are also watching Richard's live interview with him in the office. Seeing Richard teleport out of the TV studio after announcing the 3 rules, Nick Fury suddenly had a bad premonition. As an experienced agent, his intuition is much sharper than that of ordinary people. In his past career as an agent, his intuition has saved him many times. He was about to say something to Natasha and Hawkeye when Richard appeared in his sight. After seeing him, whether it was Nick Fury, Natasha, or Hawkeye, their expressions all became extremely solemn. Although Richard hasn't spoken yet, it's clear without asking that he definitely didn't come here to chat with them. Just when Natasha was about to ask him, Richard said to Nick Fury, "Kingpin told me that the Mutant Affairs Department is preparing a plan to capture me, and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military will also be involved. Whether the Mutant Affairs Department will be disbanded within 12 hours, we will know tomorrow. Before that, I plan to ask S.H.I.E.L.D. for an explanation. Give me the cosmic cube and your head, otherwise, no one in the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters will survive tonight. You don't have to explain anything to me, I'm not in the mood to listen. You just need to answer whether you give it or not." After that, Richard took out the authentic Yama knife from the system space. After hearing his words, especially after seeing the authentic Yama knife in his hand, the expressions of Nick Fury and the other 2 were as ugly as they could be. After seeing Nick Fury remain silent, Natasha said, "Richard, we..." Bang! Before he finished speaking, Natasha, who was wearing a tight black uniform and showed off her beautiful curves perfectly, flew backwards as if she was hit by a car, and hit the wall of the office heavily. Puff! The huge impact force immediately made Natasha spit out a mouthful of blood, and her fair and delicate oval face was full of painful expressions. Just because I have a good impression of Hulk doesn't mean that I have a good impression of you. If you want to die, I don't mind fulfilling your wish. Richard said to Natasha, who was flung away. Although he rarely uses flinging now, it must be said that flinging is still a very useful X-gene superpower. Barton, go to the laboratory of the Cosmic Cube and bring up the Cosmic Cube. Nick Fury said to Hawkeye, although he didn't expect Richard to come to him at this time, and he also wanted his head and the cosmic cube. He saw one thing, that is, Richard was not joking. If he refuses, not only will he die, but Hawkeye, Natasha, and everyone in the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters will die tonight. After hearing Nick Fury's words, Hawkeye hesitated for a few seconds, then, he nodded and quickly left the office. Like Nick Fury, he also confirmed that Richard was not joking. When Hawkeye left the office, Nick Fury said to Richard, "Before Barton brings the cosmic cube up, can I say a few words? If you want to leave a last word, then there is no need. If it's anything else, it's up to you." After that, Richard ignored Nick Fury, sat down on the sofa casually, and waited patiently. After seeing his actions, Nick Fury was silent for a few seconds, then slowly said, "We thought that the decadent life of indulgence would wear down your will and make you less uncontrollable. Now it seems that we all underestimated you." Richard looked up at Nick Fury and said with disdain, "You didn't underestimate me, you overestimated yourself. You obviously don't have much strength, but you still want to control everything. You are just lucky. You have accumulated enough in the 2 world wars and temporarily occupied the position of the strongest country on Blue Star. Otherwise, whether you can become a second-rate country or not is a question for you." Hearing his answer, Nick Fury frowned and said, "There are indeed many things that are unsatisfactory about the United States now, but you are also a member of the United States, and this is also your motherland. If you feel something is bad, you can use your own power to change it instead of letting things develop for the worse." Richard raised his hand to interrupt Nick Fury and continued, "Let me correct you, I never think that the United States is my motherland. In addition, I have no interest in contributing to a rubbish country. I am not here to perform what you did to the Indians back then, which is already a reflection of my high moral level. It seems like you can't say anything useful anymore, so shut up. That will give you a few more minutes to live." After saying that, Richard ignored Nick Fury, took out a bottle of whiskey from the system space, took off the cork, and drank directly. Time passes little by little. Soon, 5 minutes passed. Hawkeye returned to the office carrying a silver-white suitcase, placed it on the table, and opened the suitcase. As the suitcase was opened, the cosmic Rubik's Cube appeared in Richard's sight. Richard immediately stretched out his right hand without any hesitation. Just when he was about to touch the cosmic cube, he stopped and said to Nick Fury, "You are going to die soon, aren't you going to inform that woman, that woman?" How did he know? Nick Fury immediately frowned. Although Richard didn't say who it was, he knew that the woman Richard was talking about was Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, because besides Captain Marvel Carol, he couldn't think of anyone else who could deal with Richard. At the same time, he was also curious about how Richard knew Captain Marvel Carol. Although Captain Marvel Carol is also from Earth, she left Earth long ago. Not only that, even within S.H.I.E.L.D., few people know Captain Marvel Carol. To be precise, he is the only one who knows. Hawkeye and Natasha looked at Nick Fury with puzzled faces, waiting for his answer. "When she needs to come back, she will come back naturally," Nick Fury said slowly. "Yeah. In this case, you can die." As soon as he finished speaking, the authentic Yen demon sword in Richard's hand drew out with lightning, instantly slashed across Nick Fury's neck, and chopped off his head. After hacking Nick Fury to death, he picked up the cosmic cube and looked at it. The first time he saw the cosmic cube, he knew it was real. After holding it in his hand and looking at it for a moment, Richard put the authentic Yen Mo Dao and the cosmic Rubik's Cube back into the system space. Then, under the gaze of Natasha and Hawkeye, she used teleportation and disappeared instantly. He doesn't care how S.H.I.E.L.D. explains Nick Fury's death next, as long as S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't mess with him, he doesn't mind if S.H.I.E.L.D. exists. Silver Manor. After getting the cosmic cube he wanted, Richard went directly back to Silver Manor without visiting the White House or the Pentagon. Although he has not passed, tonight is destined to be a sleepless night for those in the White House. The next morning, the restaurant on the first floor of the main building, Richard was eating the Chinese breakfast in front of him while watching the morning news on the restaurant TV. It is reported that at 7:03 this morning, Congress officially passed the bill to permanently dissolve the Department of Mutant Affairs and repeal the Mutant Restriction Act, and submitted it to the President for signature. At 7:26, the President officially signed the bill. The White House spokesperson held a press conference to announce the official termination of all cooperation with Trask Industries, stop the promotion and injection of X-gene healing agents, and urgently recall X-gene healing agents in various cities. Trask Industries issued an announcement on its official website to close the group's weapons department and pharmaceutical research and development department. Last night, multiple pharmaceutical production bases of Trask Industries were attacked by unknown persons. After seeing the news, Richard showed a real expression, just as he expected. In the face of life and death, American officials once again lowered their arrogant heads. Whether it is American officials or most ordinary people in the United States, they are typically afraid of power and not morality. To put it simply, it means bullying the weak and fearing the strong. As long as they show strength greater than theirs, they will be as obedient as servants, compared with other nations and countries, especially compared with those nations and countries with long histories and strong cohesion. The United States is actually a very spineless country, but this is normal, because the United States is originally a country of immigrants. When the United States is strong, people from other countries will try their best to come to the United States and become a part of the United States. When the United States shows weakness, these immigrants will leave. Even ordinary people who were born and raised in the United States rarely have the idea of dedicating themselves to the United States. This is true whether it is the so-called elite or ordinary people who receive a happy education. For them, what matters is whether they are living well or not. As for whether the United States is good or not, that is not something they need to consider. Although the U.S. government gave in again, Richard knew that his words last night still made the U.S. government fulfill its wish, that is, he has now become a supervillain among the vast majority of ordinary people in the United States, a supervillain who only needs to threaten and intimidate them with force. However, he doesn't care much about this matter. Villains are villains, no big deal. From the first day he crossed into this world, he never thought about being a superhero that everyone loves. Compared with the so-called good reputation, he cares more about whether he is happy here. After breakfast, Richard came to the training room behind the main building and started today's training. Time flies, unknowingly. Half a month has passed. In the past half month, there was nothing special for Richard. He still lived a satisfying decadent life, but for the U.S. government, this half month was a month that made them anxious. With the disbanding of the Mutant Affairs Department and the abolition of the Mutant Restriction Act, the mutants who had been oppressed and discriminated against for many years began to retaliate and vent. Although these mutants did not make any particularly big noise, it was enough to make them anxious. The reception room on the first floor of the main building. Kingpin sat on the sofa opposite Richard and the White Queen, and asked his men to open the suitcases they brought. Mr. Wesley, these are the dragon bones in the hands of the 5 fingers of the hand. Take a look and see if you are satisfied. At this time, Kingpin did not have the demeanor of a gangster emperor at all, and said to Richard with a respectful face, P.S. Thank you for the 5,000 starting coins reward from Bookworm Way. Thank you for your support. The second chapter will be updated in the afternoon. Chapter 98. You don't even deserve to die under my knife. 5K chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although he knew that Jean Bing's respect was fake, Richard didn't take it to heart, and didn't even look at the dragon bone in the suitcase. He was not very interested in the dragon bone, but just wanted to see how much Jean Bing was willing to pay to ask him to deal with Wenwu, or how sincere he was. Facts have proved that Jean Bing was very sincere. If we only look at the time, it took Jean Bing more than half a month to snatch the dragon bone, and the efficiency was not particularly high, but in fact, this efficiency is already very good. On the surface, the hand is just a somewhat weird underground force, not much different from other gangs, but the strength of the hand is far beyond that of ordinary gangs, let alone the 5 fingers of the hand. They are all traders of Kunlun, and they have lived for hundreds of years with the help of the dragon bone. The crazy ninjas and Heikong of the hand alone are not easy to deal with, not to mention that the hand also believes in the original demon beast. Although the beast believed by the hand is not particularly famous in the Marvel Universe, that is because there are too many great people in the Marvel Universe, not because the beast is too weak. Richard simply looked at the dragon bones in the suitcase and said to Kingpin, I see your sincerity. I will help you solve the problem between Wenwu and the 10 Rings gang. You can leave. After hearing his words, Kingpin immediately said, Okay, then I'll trouble you, Mr. Wesley. After that, Kingpin left with his men. When Kingpin and others left the living room, the White Queen said to Richard, "Do you plan to kill Wenwu and destroy the Ten Rings gang?" "It depends on the situation. I only said that I would help solve the problem between Wenwu and the Ten Rings gang, but I didn't say that I would definitely kill Wenwu. If Wenwu knows what's good for him, it doesn't matter if he lives. But he will probably fight with me, because I will soon become his enemy who killed his son." Richard said calmly. Although Kingpin had just delivered the dragon bones today, he had already asked someone to investigate whether Wenwu had children in advance. According to the investigation, Wenwu did have children. However, unlike the one son and one daughter in the movie, Wenwu in this world only had one son, Shang-Chi, and no daughter. Although there was no daughter, Richard found that Shang-Chi in this world looked almost exactly the same as in the movie, if there was any difference. It was that Shang-Chi in this world was younger. After seeing the other person's appearance, Richard had the urge to kill him immediately. Although he had such an urge, he did not immediately go to San Francisco to kill Shang-Chi, who changed his name to Sean and was proud of his job as a parking attendant like in the movie. Shang-Chi did make him feel disgusted, but this disgusting guy was not worth his immediate trip to San Francisco. To put it simply, Shang-Chi, who had forgotten his ancestors and was brainwashed by American values, was not worthy of him doing this. In addition, he also found that Shang-Chi in this universe had some secret connections with the legendary Tarot. The intelligence about Shang-Chi was not investigated by Richard himself, but by the Hellfire Club. On the third day after the live interview, the three remaining senior executives of the Hellfire Club, Black Bishop Isabel Nava, Black Car Bud Blom, and White Car Serial McCartney, took the initiative to visit him and express their desire to become his subordinates. After a brief thought, he accepted the surrender of the three black bishops and completely took over the Hellfire Club, Silver King. He did not serve as the Black King or the White King of the Hellfire Club, but became the Silver King that the Hellfire Club had never had. In addition, after becoming the Silver King of Hellfire, the first thing he did was to cancel the seats of the Black King and the White King. Since the Hellfire Club already belongs to him, there is no need to set up the so-called Black King and the White King. The three black bishops had no objection to his arrangement. After he became the only king of the Hellfire Club, the White Queen also returned to the Hellfire Club and was responsible for managing the daily affairs of the Hellfire Club. Today's White Queen can be said to have multiple positions. In addition to managing the daily affairs of the Hellfire Club, she also manages Richard's huge assets and the affairs of the manor. In addition, all those messy businesses are now managed by her. Although Richard arranged a lot of things, the White Queen not only had no complaints, but also enjoyed it. Because of Richard's arrangements, her strong woman career ambition has been unprecedentedly satisfied. What is the relationship between Shang-Chi and Tarot? The Hellfire Club has not yet investigated. However, there is one thing that Richard can now be 100% sure of, that is, Shang-Chi's mother is not Ingli in Tarot. When he first saw the information about Wenwu and the Ten Rings gang provided by Jean, he guessed that Wenwu did not marry Ingli as in the movie, because Wenwu and the Ten Rings gang never stopped expanding in the underground world. The reason why he can be 100% sure now is that when the Hellfire Club was investigating Shang-Chi in depth, they found Ingli and Ingnan in San Francisco. Like Shang-Chi, Ingli and Ingnan look much younger than in the movie. Not only that, they, like the Hellfire Club, are secretly keeping an eye on Shang-Chi, although he didn't know why they, as the guardians of Tarot, left Tarot and went to San Francisco to secretly follow Shang-Chi. Richard's intuition told him that this might be related to the Dark Dweller sealed in the Dark Portal. The next morning, after having breakfast at the manor, Richard used teleportation to leave the manor. The distance between New York and San Francisco is about 4,700 kilometers. If you take a plane, it will take about 6 hours, and it took him less than a minute to get from New York to San Francisco. After arriving in San Francisco, he did not immediately go to the hotel where Shang-Chi worked, but came to the base of the Hellfire Club in San Francisco. It's called a base, but it's actually a mansion located in the wealthy area of San Francisco. After the death of Black King Shao, the Hellfire Club had serious problems with its liquidity. However, the fixed assets of the Hellfire Club were not greatly affected, and the original bases were preserved. After seeing Richard come to the base like a ghost, Isabel Nava, the Black Bishop who was in charge of the San Francisco base, came to him and bowed to him. Although the code name is Black Bishop, you can tell from the name that Black Bishop Isabel is a woman, to be precise, a petite, fair-skinned, beautiful woman who looks as young as a high school girl. From the outside, Isabel is about the same age as a high school girl, but in fact, her age is about the same as the White Queen Emma. Before Isabel could speak, Richard's voice rang out. "Give me the latest information about Shang-Chi and the two women." "Yes, sir." Isabel replied quickly. After seeing Richard, she knew that Richard came here to deal with Shang-Chi's affairs. Although she didn't know why Richard was interested in Shang-Chi, she controlled her curiosity very well and didn't ask questions. Instead, she sent people to secretly follow Shang-Chi and Ing Li's sisters according to Richard's instructions. Soon, Isabel returned to the living room with a tablet and handed it to Richard, who was sitting on the sofa. After taking the tablet handed by Isabel, Richard immediately browsed the files inside. Just as he expected, Shang-Chi, who made him feel sick, was very proud of his current job as a hotel parking attendant, serving white people diligently. In addition to Shang-Chi, his Chinese female friend with a Berkeley honors degree was also very satisfied with her current job as a parking attendant. After reading Shang-Chi's recent intelligence, Richard browsed the intelligence of Ing Li and Ing Nan. Compared with Shang-Chi, who was effortless to investigate, it was not so easy to investigate the whereabouts of Ing Li and Ing Nan. However, the mutants sent by Isabel still found a lot of things. For example, they recently destroyed a base of the 10 Rings gang in San Francisco. What exactly do they want to do? After seeing this information, Richard frowned slightly. Although he has not been to Tarot yet, judging from the actions of Ing Li and Ing Nan, the Tarot in this universe is very different from the one in the movie. The Tarot in the movie will not take the initiative to send people to human countries. Call back the people who are watching them. Also, check where Wenwu is now. Richard put the tablet in his hand on the table in front of him and said to Isabel. "Okay, sir." Isabel replied quickly. After giving Isabel instructions, Richard used teleportation to disappear in front of her and came to the top of a building in downtown San Francisco, overlooking the hotel next to the building. The hotel next to the building is where Shang-Chi and Katie work. At this time, Shang-Chi and Katie, wearing the red uniforms of parking attendants, parked the cars for hotel guests like servants. Richard does not discriminate against any kind of job. Whether it is a parking attendant, a takeaway man or a courier, they are all normal jobs in his opinion. But what makes Shang-Chi and Katie disgust him is not because of their job as parking attendants, but the attitude and ideas they show. Shang-Chi has very good skills and can speak 4 languages. Although he is not handsome, he is also quite decent. As for Katie, she looks a bit ugly, but she is not stupid. After all, stupid people can't get a glorious degree from Berkeley. If other parking attendants have no choice but to become parking attendants to support themselves, then the two of them are typical self-degradation, lack of ambition, and shame. Obviously there are other better choices, but they choose to be parking attendants, and they are proud of it. What they did is equivalent to promoting that even excellent Chinese people can only do low-level jobs such as parking attendants to serve white people in the United States. Although until now, Richard still holds the mentality that he is playing a time travel game, but the existence of Shang-Chi and Katie still makes him, the player, very unhappy. To be precise, it is particularly unhappy. After watching the smiling, self-degrading Shang-Chi and Katie tirelessly helping hotel guests park their cars, Richard did not hesitate and directly performed teleportation to the door of the hotel. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of Shang-Chi, Katie, and the hotel guests. There is murderous intent. And it is a very strong murderous intent. As soon as Richard appeared, Shang-Chi felt a strong murderous intent on him. Not only that, he also found that Richard's murderous intent was aimed at him and Katie. Although he didn't know why Richard had such a strong murderous intent towards him and Katie, he immediately prepared to attack with all his strength. Unlike Shang-Chi, who had already realized that something was wrong, Katie, who looked ugly and shameless, did not realize the danger. After seeing Richard, a surprise expression immediately appeared on her disgusting face. Then, she took out her mobile phone from her pocket and pointed it at Richard, preparing to take a photo of Richard. However, at the moment when she raised her mobile phone to Richard, a wind blade of 20 to 30 centimeters long appeared out of thin air. Swish! The sharp wind blade instantly passed through her hands and cut off her hands. When her hands fell to the ground, Katie, who looked disgusting, let out a sharp howl of pain. Flying. Bang! Katie, who was howling in pain, was immediately blown away by the shock wave that was imperceptible to the naked eye and fell heavily on the sidewalk outside the hotel. "Are you here to seek revenge for my father?" Shang-Chi looked at Richard with anger. "No. Actually, I admire your father. I came here specifically to kill you and that ugly woman," Richard said calmly. Although there were still many hotel guests and pedestrians around, he didn't mind these people hearing what he said. "Come here specifically to kill me and Katie?" Shang-Chi looked at Richard angrily and continued. "Why? We don't know each other. We have never offended you, haven't offended me. Your existence has already offended me." Richard looked at Shang-Chi with disdain and said slowly, "I don't need to explain to you why. Don't you really dislike your father training you to be a killer? But looking at you now, you are ready to kill me with what your father taught you. Don't say I won't give you a chance to resist. Come on, let me see what kind of ability you have when you are willing to be a parking attendant despite your extraordinary abilities. I won't use a knife, because you don't even have the qualifications to die under my knife." Although it's unknown why Richard was so angry at the two insignificant parking attendants, the guests and pedestrians around him showed an expression of eating melons. Eating melons is human nature. What's more, eating the latest melons at the first scene. After hearing Richard's words, Shang-Chi did not hesitate and immediately took an attacking posture. Then, he suddenly exerted force with his legs, rushed to Richard like a tiger hunting prey, and struck Richard's head with his right fist. Swish. At the moment when Shang-Chi swung his fist, a wind blade instantly formed, crossed his right arm, and cut off his right arm. Blood splashed out from the wound of the broken arm like tap water, and the severed right arm fell to the ground under the action of gravity. Richard did not let Shang-Chi's blood stain himself, and used magic to block the splashing blood. Then, he raised his right foot and kicked Shang-Chi's chest, kicking him out. He controlled his strength very well, so that the kicked Shang-Chi fell next to the ugly Katie whose arms were cut off. The gap is too big. Although he was very unwilling, Shang-Chi had to admit that the gap between himself and Richard was too big. "I originally wanted to torture you severely, and then kill you too. But now I find that seeing your faces will make me feel sick and nauseous." Richard came to Shang-Chi and Katie like a ghost and said to them, without waiting for their answer, he summoned the wind blade again. Just as he was about to chop off Shang-Chi and Katie's heads with the wind blade and send these two self-depraved guys to hell, a crisp voice came from a distance. "Stop!" Looking in the direction of the voice, Richard saw a beautiful Asian beauty with long flowing hair. Ingli. The person who spoke was none other than Shang-Chi's mother Ingli in the movie universe. Ingli at this time, wearing a white dress like a white training suit, looked fairy-like, and was somewhat out of tune with the pedestrians around her. Next to her, there was a furry, round, strange creature with no eyes, nose, or mouth, 6 legs and 2 pairs of wings, Dijiang. To be precise, it was the Dijiang in tarot. Although Dijiang looked very unique, the pedestrians around did not notice the existence of Dijiang. After seeing that the person who spoke was Ingli, Richard raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. Tsk. With the sound of snapping fingers, the wind blade immediately cut through Shang-Chi and Katie's necks, ending their lives completely. "You." Seeing Richard calmly killing Shang-Chi and Katie, Ingli's face immediately showed an angry expression. Then, she made a posture similar to the starting position of Tai Chi. After looking at Ingli with interest, Richard used telepathy, mind freeze. He thought he could easily freeze Ingli with telepathy, but it turns out that although tarot people look no different from ordinary people, they are actually very different. When the power of the mind touched Ingli, a special energy surged out of Ingli's body, blocking the power of the mind that tried to freeze her. What is this? Is it the energy given by the dragon? Richard showed a surprised expression. Although he did not freeze Ingli with telepathy as planned, he found that the special energy in Ingli's body was not very strong. After discovering this, he did not use other superpowers, but continued to use telepathy, mind freeze. Although it was still mind freeze, it was different from before. Ingli's body was successfully frozen by him this time. Although his current telepathy has not been upgraded to the Omega level, it does not mean that he can't use telepathy to freeze Ingli. As long as the released mental power exceeds the resistance limit of Ingli's energy, the mental power can successfully invade her body. Chapter 99. You will definitely get your comeuppance. 5K chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When the power of the mind invaded Inglei's body, Ingley was immediately fixed and lost control of her body. To be precise, she lost control of her body and limbs. After discovering this, the angry expression on Inglei's face instantly turned into shock. Although she and Ingnan came to San Francisco, she didn't know Richard very well. She just saw reports about Richard in the news and newspapers. When Richard used telepathy to fix her, her first reaction was to mobilize the chi in her body to release Richard from his restraints on her, but soon, she found that she couldn't mobilize the chi in her body at all. Trouble. The expression on Inglei's face became ugly. After fixing her with telepathy, Richard ignored the bodies of Shang-Chi and Katie and walked towards her slowly. After coming to Ingley and taking a close look at Ingley, who was much younger than in the movie, he turned his head and looked at Dejiang beside him. At this time, Dejiang was guarding Ingley like a loyal guard dog, making a strange sound to threaten him. Control gravity. Richard used his superpower of controlling gravity to make Dejiang fly. Then, he grabbed Dejiang's wings with his right hand and Ingley's shoulders with his left hand. Telepathy. Under the gaze of the onlookers, he and the motionless Ingley disappeared in an instant. When he left with Ingley and Dejiang, the sound of sirens slowly came from a distance. On the roof of a building in the city center, Richard did not take Ingley and Dejiang back to the mansion of the Hellfire Club, but came to the roof of a building a few blocks away. After taking them to the roof of the building, he did not ask Ingley, but directly used telepathy to read Ingley's memory. Without much effort, he found the information he wanted in Ingley's memory and frowned slightly. Although the Shang-Chi of this universe is not Ingley's child, Shang-Chi is still the child of Wenwu and the guardian of Tarot. Guangbua's daughter. Shang-Chi's mother is Guangbua's daughter. Just like in the movie universe, Wenwu in this universe is also very interested in Tarot. However, the guardian of Tarot he met in the maze forest was not Ingley, but Guangbua's daughter. The next thing is very simple. They fell in love after fighting, and then Guangbua's daughter abandoned her identity as the guardian of Tarot and eloped with Wenwu. Although Guangbua's daughter did not make Wenwu think of returning to the countryside like Ingley in the movie, she also gave birth to Shang-Chi 4. Wenwu. Not long after Shang-Chi was born, Guangbua's daughter died of illness. Because he promised his wife not to invade Tarot, Wenwu did not continue to attack Tarot, but led the Ten Rings gang to expand the territory in the underground world. After reading Ingley's memory, Richard not only figured out the relationship between Shang-Chi and Tarot, but also figured out why Ingley and Ingnan left Tarot and came to San Francisco. Shenlong's instructions. They received instructions from Shenlong and prepared to bring Shang-Chi, who had run away from home, back to Tarot. As for why Shenlong, the guardian of Tarot, did this, Ingley and Ingnan did not know. After figuring out the whole story, Richard thought for a few seconds. Then, he used telepathy to tamper with Ingley's subconscious. Although tampering with a woman's subconscious is not a gentleman, Richard never considered himself a gentleman. Moreover, there is no need to make things so troublesome if they can be handled simply. It is better to tamper with Ingley's subconscious than to kill her. Although Ingley is not an ordinary person, Richard tampered with Ingley's subconscious without much effort. After doing this, he lifted the mental fixation on Ingley. Ingley didn't know what Richard had done to her, but after regaining control of her body, she found that her hostility towards Richard had disappeared. Not only that, when the idea of dealing with Richard and avenging Shang-Chi came into her mind, she felt the resistance from her body's instinct. "What did you do to me?" Ingley looked at Richard vigilantly and asked quickly. "Nothing, just did something to keep you alive." Richard replied calmly. After hearing his words, Ingley frowned immediately. After a few seconds, she continued, "What do you want to do? Why do you want to kill Shang-Chi? How did he offend you? Why do I want to kill him? I don't need to explain to you. As for what I want to do, I want to go to Tarot." Richard said slowly, "Tarot?" Ingley didn't know that Richard read her memory. After hearing Richard mention Tarot, an idea immediately flashed through her mind, and she looked at Richard with a vigilant face. Although she didn't speak, Richard knew what she was thinking. "You guessed right, I want to conquer Tarot. Tarot is a good place, I like it very much, and I plan to turn Tarot into my private territory. But don't worry, I have no interest in ruling you, I just like Tarot. Of course, in the process of conquering Tarot, I will deal with the Soul Eater and Dark Dweller sealed behind the Dark Portal." Richard didn't mind Ingli knowing his true purpose, and said slowly, "Let's not talk about Ingli's subconscious being tampered by him. Even if that wasn't the case, Ingli couldn't pose any threat to him, not to mention Ingli, even if everyone in Tarot, as well as the dragon, phoenix, unicorn, swanee, nine-tailed fox and other creatures came together, they would not be able to pose a threat to him." After hearing that Richard planned to conquer Tarot, Ingli immediately assumed a fighting stance. Afterwards, he stood there with a strange expression and did not take action. It wasn't that she didn't want to take action, but that she found that she couldn't take action at all. Her body was resisting taking action against Richard. After realizing something was wrong, she immediately mobilized the chi in her body, but no matter how she activated the chi in her body still resisted attacking Richard. "Stop wasting your energy, you can't possibly attack me. By the way, you can't refuse my order," Richard said to Ingli. After discovering that Ingli was younger than in the movie, he decisively added Ingli to the harem list. Among the female characters that have appeared in Marvel movies, there are not many female characters that interest him, and Ingli happens to be one of them. As for Ingnan, who is obviously Ingli's sister, but looks more mature and looks more like Ingli's mother, he is not very interested. "I will never obey your orders," Ingli replied quickly. "It's not up to you. Since you don't really believe it, I'll let you see it. I'm very interested in your martial arts. Please play a complete version for me to see," Richard said to Ingli. "I don't want to." Before she finished speaking, Ingli took a few steps back unconsciously, then, under Richard's watchful eyes, he performed a complete boxing technique. After a few minutes, Ingli looked at her hands in disbelief, unable to understand why she did what she did just now. "I said, you can't disobey my orders now. Don't tell me that I just want you to do a set of punches. Even if I order you to do a striptease now, you will obediently do it." Although Richard's tone was calm, for Ingli, it was like a bolt from the blue. Just as she was thinking about whether Shenlong had the ability to return herself to normal, Richard continued, "Don't worry, I am a lecherous person, but I won't let you do a striptease in a place like this. If you're dancing in the bedroom for me to watch, that's a different story." Although he can completely erase Ingli's memory and make Ingli willingly obey all his orders, but he didn't intend to do that. As for why, the reason is simple, because it is not exciting enough. Since you want to pursue excitement, of course you must follow through. "Shameless," Ingli cursed at Richard. "Thank you for the compliment." Richard didn't pay attention to Ingli's words, he came straight to her and hugged her slender waist. When Ingli held her waist by Richard, the first reaction in her mind was to push him away immediately, but unfortunately, her current body doesn't quite listen to her. Unable to resist Richard with action, she could only raise her head and glare at Richard fiercely. Richard ignored her and arrested Di Jiang next to him. Teleportation. In just an instant, he took Ingli and Di Jiang away from the roof of the building and arrived at the apartment where the two Ingli sisters now lived. Ingli and Ingnan came to San Francisco a week ago and found Shang-Chi, but unfortunately, they failed to convince Shang-Chi to return to Tarot with them. As for forcibly kidnapping Shang-Chi, it was not in line with their style. Therefore, they could only choose to stay in San Francisco temporarily and prepare to slowly convince Shang-Chi. As soon as he returned to the apartment, Richard saw Ingnan, who was obviously his younger sister, but looked more like Ingli's mother. Before Ingnan could speak, he used telepathy to completely freeze Ingnan's consciousness and body, turned to Ingli and said, "I will implant a false memory in Ingnan, making her think that I am your new boyfriend in San Francisco." As soon as Richard finished speaking, Ingli shouted to him, "I will definitely tell Ingnan the truth. Whatever you want. But I suggest you don't do this. If the false memory I implanted conflicts with Ingnan's real memory, I can't guarantee that she will not become confused due to the memory conflict." Richard reminded Ingli with a calm expression. After hearing his words, Ingli immediately frowned. You are a shameless scumbag. Is it just shameless? I think you can also add the word lustful. Richard said with a smile. You will definitely have your retribution, Ingli said seriously. Does evil get retribution? If there really was evil in this world and there would be retribution for evil, then this world would be heaven long ago. After saying that, Richard ignored Ingli and began to implant false memories into Ingnan. Without any effort, he completed the implantation of the false memory and released Ingnan's mental fixation. As the mental immobilization was lifted, Ingnan looked at Richard and Ingli with a puzzled face, and said slowly, "Why are you back so early? Did something happen to Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi will not come back to Taro with us. He is dead." Richard replied. "Dead?" Ingnan immediately frowned. Although Shang-Chi's mother left Taro very early, in any case, Shang-Chi's mother was once a part of Taro. Not only that, Shang-Chi's mother is their cousin, so Shang-Chi is their nephew. "How did he die?" Ingnan continued to ask. "I killed him. He provoked me, and I killed him in anger." Richard replied calmly. When implanting false memories into Ingnan, he also tampered with Ingnan's subconscious and changed Ingnan's attitude towards Shang-Chi. This operation is not difficult, because Ingli and Ingnan have not had much contact with Shang-Chi. If Shang-Chi's mother was not their cousin, Shang-Chi would be a complete stranger to them. "What about Shenlong's instructions?" "Shenlong asked us to bring Shang-Chi back to Taro," Ingnan said with a frown. "This is very simple. I will go back to Taro with you guys. Although I don't know why Shenlong wants Shang-Chi to return to Taro, if I'm not mistaken, it should be related to the Soul Eater and Dark Dweller sealed behind the Dark Portal. If Shenlong just wants to deal with the Dark Dweller, it doesn't matter whether Shang-Chi is there or not. I can deal with the Dark Dweller alone." Richard looked at Ingnan with confidence. Although he always felt that something seemed to be wrong, Ingnan did not continue to ask, and slowly said, "Then when will we return to Taro, now? Let's go to Los Angeles first. Aren't you very dissatisfied with Wenwu for kidnapping Feng Tong? Before returning to Taro, let's go and teach Wenwu a lesson." The Feng Tong mentioned by Richard is Shang-Chi's mother. By reading Ingli's memory, he found that Ingli and Ingnan destroyed the base of the Ten Rings gang in San Francisco some time ago, not to find Shang-Chi, but to vent their dissatisfaction with Wenwu. At that time, they had found Shang-Chi, who was working as a parking attendant, and had already contacted Shang-Chi. However, Shang-Chi did not agree to go back to Taro with them. The Shang-Chi in the movie at least lived with Ingli for a period of time and knew the existence of Taro. The Shang-Chi in this universe died soon after Feng Tong was born, not to mention that he had no impression of Taro. Even his impression of his mother Feng Tong was very vague. He had only seen the photo of Wenwu and Feng Tong. "Okay. When do we leave?" Ingnan asked immediately without any hesitation after hearing that Wenwu, who abducted her cousin, could be taught a lesson. "Tomorrow. You have been in San Francisco for a while, and you haven't been to San Francisco properly. Play here for a day first, and then go to Los Angeles tomorrow," Richard said slowly. "In that case, I just happen to have a few places I want to visit." After that, Ingnan was ready to go out. At this moment, Richard took out a Centurion black gold card from the system space and handed it to Ingnan. "You can't go shopping without money. Swipe my card. Buy whatever you want, don't worry about the price," Richard said to Ingnan. Although she didn't know what the Centurion black gold card meant, she knew one thing very well, that is, she knew Richard was not short of money. Even though they had not been in San Francisco for a long time, they had seen a lot of reports and news about Richard. Ingnan took the Centurion black gold card handed over by Richard and said with a smile, "Then I won't be polite. You and sister can enjoy your time together." After that, she left the apartment. When Ingnan left the apartment, Ingli, who had been silent all the time, looked at Richard with dissatisfaction and quickly said, "Is it fun to play with other people's memories? If I don't do this, Ingnan will fight me to save you. If she does, she is my enemy. And for enemies, my approach has always been to kill them all. If you can't accept that I implanted false memories in Ingnan and think that I am playing with her memories, I can remove the implanted false memories. Are you sure you want to see her fight me to death?" Richard said slowly. Hearing his answer, Ingli didn't say anything else and fell silent. After more than 10 seconds, she slowly said, "Can you really deal with the Dark Dwellers and the Soul Eaters? The Dark Dwellers and the Soul Eaters are not as strong as you think. Rather than saying they are strong, it's better to say that you are too weak, so you can only seal them, and you can't completely destroy them." Richard came to the sofa in the living room and sat down, saying casually, "For Taro's people, the Dark Dwellers and the Soul Eaters are indeed very difficult to deal with, but for him, it's just that, if nothing else, the hellfire he plundered from the Spirit of Vengeance can deal with the Dark Dwellers and the Soul Eaters very well. They are not weak. If you can really deal with them, I will forgive you for killing Shang-Chi and implanting false memories in Ying-Nan. Ying Li said quickly. Compared with before, her attitude has improved significantly now, at least she no longer looks at Richard with the eyes of an enemy. Just forgive. I thought you would say you would repay me with your body. After all, I helped Taro solve the hidden dangers of thousands of years. Richard said with a smile. He was not surprised that Ying Li would suddenly change her attitude. The Dark Dweller and the Soul Eater have always been the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of all Taro people. In other words, the existence of the Dark Dwellers and Soul Eaters has changed Taro to a great extent. Without them, Taro would not have become a full force, and there would be no constant worry that they would break the seal of the Dark Portal. Only a ghost would commit himself to you. After saying that, Ying Li turned around and returned to the bedroom, no longer paying attention to Richard. Night. Ying-Nan returned to the apartment after a day of shopping spree. As soon as she returned to the apartment, she saw the dinner prepared by Ying Li. Taro's eating habits are very similar to Chinese food, although this is not Taro, sourcing Chinese food ingredients is not difficult. After seeing the dinner prepared by Ying Li, Ying-Nan immediately came to the dining table and sat down. He said with a surprised look, "Sister, didn't you say that cooking was too troublesome yesterday? Why did you change your mind today?" Before Ying Li could answer, Richard said, "Ying Li said she wanted to show off her superb cooking skills to open my eyes, so she started cooking." P.S. Chapter 2 will be updated at night. Chapter 100. Your 10 rings are great, now they belong to me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Los Angeles, the base of the 10 Rings Gang, practice room, Razor Fist, a tall man with a retractable razor on his right arm, stood at the door of the practice room, debating whether to go in and report to Wenwu. Although Wenwu is only practicing boxing now and does not use the 10 rings on his arms, but there is a rule in the 10 Rings Gang, that is, you must not disturb him when he is practicing, otherwise, he would be easily beaten to death. After standing at the door of the practice room and struggling for a few minutes, Razor Fist walked in. "Sir, there's something going on in San Francisco," Razor Fist said to Wenwu. Wenwu, who was practicing boxing, stopped with an unhappy look on his face, turned his back to Razor Fist and said, "What happened?" "Your son Shang-Chi was killed." Razor Fist quickly replied, "Is Shang so angry?" Wenwu immediately turned around and looked at Razor Fist with a cold expression. "Be clear. Your son Shang-Chi was killed by Richard Wesley this morning in front of the hotel where he worked. The female friend of your son was also killed together." Razor Fist didn't hesitate and replied as quickly as possible, "Richard Wesley?" Wenwu frowned. He originally thought that the person who killed Shang-Chi was one of his enemies. After all, the expansion of the 10 Rings Gang over the years has offended many people. Although most people have been driven out and killed, it is inevitable that a few fish will slip through the net. "Okay, I get it." After saying that, Wenwu ignored Razor Fist and continued to practice boxing, different from before. This time he used the 10 rings on both arms. "Okay, sir." Without any hesitation, Razor Fist left the practice room as quickly as possible. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he heard a huge explosion-like sound from behind him. After hearing the loud sound from the practice room, he quickened his pace and quickly disappeared into the corridor. San Francisco, Ying Li and Ying-Nan's apartment. Although Ying Li is not a great chef, her cooking skills are not bad at all. Not only that, the taro dishes prepared by Ying Li also have some special flavors that are not found in traditional Chinese food. The ingredients are all common Chinese food ingredients, but I don't know whether it is due to special cooking techniques or other reasons. The taro dishes cooked with these common ingredients have a special taste that cannot be described in words. When Ying Li said she wanted to open his eyes, Richard originally thought that Ying Li wanted to prepare a dark meal to take revenge on him. It turns out that he was overthinking. The dinner prepared by Ying Li is not only not a dark dish, but also full of color, flavor and taste. It is an out-and-out gourmet meal. How did you make these dishes? There are several Chinese chefs in my manor, but the things they make are very different from what you make. Richard asked Ying Li. Of course it will be different. This is the secret recipe of taro cooking, Ingli replied quickly. Although she didn't say what the secret recipe was, Richard quickly came up with a guess. The ingredients are all ordinary ingredients, and the kitchen utensils in the kitchen are not special kitchen utensils. After excluding the ingredients and kitchen utensils, all that remains is the cooking technique. Did you use qi when preparing these dishes? Richard looked at Ingli and asked calmly, although he didn't know what kind of energy the qi in Ingli and Ingnan's bodies was, but judging from the information known so far, the qi in their bodies is somewhat similar to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in Xianxia novels. Ingli glanced at Richard in surprise, nodded without saying anything. After having enough wine and food, Ingnan, who had been out shopping all day, took the initiative to do the dishes. Meanwhile, Richard and Ingli were sitting in the living room staring at each other. After a few minutes like this, Ingli said, "You've already had dinner. When will you leave?" "Leave? I don't think I said I was leaving tonight, right?" Richard asked about Ingli. After hearing his answer, Ingli immediately said, "There is no room for you here, you can't stay here overnight. The false memory I implanted in Ingnan contains the content that you actively invited me to stay and spend the night in your room." Richard looked at Ingli calmly and said slowly, You are shameless." Ingli was stunned for a moment, then frowned, pointed at Richard and cursed. "Don't taro people usually curse? This is the third time today that you have called me shameless." Richard shrugged and said indifferently, if possible, Ingli really wanted to use taro martial arts to teach Richard a lesson, but unfortunately, she couldn't do it, not to mention her body resisting taking action against Richard. Even if Richard didn't tamper with her subconscious, the gap in strength between her and Richard was still too big. After seeing Ingli's not-so-majestic chest rising and falling violently due to his anger, Richard smiled and said, "Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. I'll leave in a moment, you don't need to worry about what I'm going to do to you tonight." He does have some interest in Ingli's body, but this doesn't mean that he will immediately force his beauty like a lewd thief. Apart from the fact that forceful melons are not sweet, it goes against his principles to force the other person like a lewd thief. Let's play, let's make trouble. It's not okay to force yourself on the opponent. Although he didn't think he was a good person, he had his own principles. "It's better this way," Ingli said immediately. Richard didn't continue talking and picked up the hot tea in front of him. When Ingnan came out of the kitchen, he stood up and said to Ingli and Ingnan, "I will come at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Remember to prepare your luggage." After that, he performed telepathy in front of Ingli and Ingnan. In just a moment, he disappeared from the sight of Ingli and Ingnan. When he left, Ingli, who was sitting on the sofa, finally breathed a sigh of relief, picked up the Dijiang Chiochio next to her, put it on her legs, and stroked Dijiang Chiochio like a dog. It was more than 2 o'clock in the morning. Ingli, who was wearing white clothes like a training suit and lying on the bed with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes, sat up on the bed, and looked out the window with a solemn expression. Boom. After a few seconds, the wall of the bedroom exploded like a rocket attack, and the broken wall tiles splashed around like raindrops. Although she didn't know who the enemy was, the moment the wall was blown open, Ingli mobilized the qi in her body and dissolved the bricks that attacked her one by one. After using Taro's martial arts to dissolve the bricks that attacked her, she grabbed the Dijiang ball beside the bed and threw it into the living room. Then, she came to the broken hole. Alone, is it him? On the roof of the residential building next door, Ingli saw a middle-aged man in a white suit who had never been seen before but was not unfamiliar, Wenwu. The person who attacked the bedroom just now was none other than Shang-Chi's father, Wenwu, the leader of the Ten Rings gang. After seeing Wenwu, Ingli quickly glanced around. Sure enough, in addition to Wenwu, 10 Rings gang warriors wearing black armor appeared on the roofs of nearby residential buildings and streets. Trouble. Although Wenwu appeared a little suddenly, Ingli quickly guessed why Wenwu found this place. Ingnan went on a shopping spree in San Francisco today with Richard's Centurion black gold card, which was enough for Wenwu to find them. Not only that, from Wenwu's murderous eyes, Wenwu also regarded the two sisters as Richard's accomplices. Although it was Richard who killed Shang-Chi, Wenwu was not arrogant enough to think that he could compete with Richard. Since he couldn't seek revenge on Richard immediately, he would collect some interest from him first, for example, killing Ingli and Ingnan, who were Richard's companions. When Ingli looked at Wenwu and the 10 Rings fighters, Ingnan, who was dressed, came to her side. After seeing Yingli and Yingnan standing in the hole in the bedroom wall at the same time, Wenwu said to the Razor Fist and the Death Dealer beside him in a cold tone, "Capture them alive, I want to use them to lure out Richard Wesley." "Okay, sir," Razor Fist replied immediately. The Death Dealer, who was wearing a dramatic mask and dressed like an assassin, also nodded. Then, they stood there motionless like a sculpture, not only them, but also the surrounding 10 Rings gang soldiers. After seeing this scene, Wenwu immediately realized that something was wrong. At this moment, a voice came from behind him. "Is it not that troublesome to see me? I have already checked in at a nearby 5-star hotel with my real name. You can find out by sending someone to investigate." The person who spoke was none other than Richard. Although he left Yingli and Yingnan's apartment, he did not return to the base of the Hellfire Club, but stayed in a nearby 5-star hotel, waiting for Wenwu to come with the 10 Rings gang soldiers to seek revenge on him. He had already prepared himself for Wenwu to come and seek revenge on him at any time. Unexpectedly, Wenwu did not bring anyone to find him, but surrounded Yingli and Yingnan's apartment with the 10 Rings gang. After hearing Richard's words, Wenwu turned around suddenly and swung his right arm like lightning. As his right arm swung out, the 5 iron rings on his right arm shone with a deep blue light, flying towards Richard like a cannonball. In just a moment, the 5 iron rings came to Richard. Richard did not dodge, but used his Omega-level material manipulation superpower. Under Wenwu's gaze, he slowly raised his right hand. Although he did not make any other movements, the 5 iron rings that attacked him flew to his right arm one after another as if they had returned to their owner's hands. After seeing this scene, Wenwu's expression became a little ugly. Although he didn't know what Richard did, Wenwu didn't hesitate at all, and his legs suddenly exerted force and shot towards him. At the same time, he raised his left hand and swung his left fist, facing Wenwu's attack. Richard did not continue to use his superpowers, nor did he use template skills, but swung his right fist with 5 iron rings. Boom! Richard and Wenwu's fists collided without giving in. The huge impact force caused a shocking sound and visible shock waves to burst out at the moment when the two fists touched. Although Wenwu was the master of the 10 rings, Richard understood the function and release method of the iron rings the moment he put on the 5 iron rings. It gives the wearer far more strength, speed, endurance, and long life than ordinary people. It can automatically change its size to adapt to the wearer's arm, and can be controlled by the mind after leaving the wearer's arm. It has the ability to fly, which can be used to launch attacks or restrict enemies. The energy contained in the iron ring can also be launched in the form of shock waves or directly detonated. Richard did not use his full strength. Otherwise, even if he did not have the enhancement given by the iron ring, he could punch Wenwu away with super strength and super physique. Not to mention that Wenwu only has 5 iron rings left now. Even if he has a complete 10 rings, Wenwu's strength and physique are far inferior to him. At this time, he did not use his full strength. In addition to wanting to see to what extent the 5 iron rings can enhance Wenwu's strength and physique, there is another reason. That is, he plans to take the 5 iron rings on Wenwu's left arm. "Your 10 rings are good, now they belong to me." Richard looked at Wenwu calmly and said slowly.